Meeting for Tuesday, April 1st. April Fools, there's no meeting. Just joking. Anyway, it's currently 7 o'clock. The Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. They would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we would like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many tutorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. I'll call the meeting to order. Can I get someone to approve the agenda as circulated? Moved. Second. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Matters raised here for Council's consideration should be consecutively focused on agenda items only. Please limit comments to 2 minutes and save the questions for question period later in the meeting. Anybody like to come forward for public input? If you could, just your name and address, please.
Sure. Trudy Schneider, 2318 Sunnyside Road. I've been looking for the reports related to the development on the south part of Anmore, and I would just like to know when, well, I don't want to ask the question, I'm just saying I've been looking for the reports, and so have other people, and so please know that and make them available.
I believe they're going to be forthcoming, and I believe they will be posted to the web page. Is that correct, Ms. Elric?
Thank you, through the chair. Once they are available, they will be posted to the web page and to the Have Your Say Anmore as well.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, thank you. Any other public inputs? Okay, we'll move on. We have a delegation. John Weniger, JW Infrastructure Planning, is planning to present regarding our asset management. Mr. Weniger.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. I have a presentation tonight that's going to provide a summary of the update to the Village's asset management plan. There? Okay. Okay. A little background on this report. The first asset management plan, investment plan, was prepared in 2018 by Urban Systems, and then it was updated in 2019 to include the stormwater assets. This project, this update this year is intended to add the new assets that the village has acquired since 2019. Also to adjust the replacement values to adjust for inflation, because there has been a fair amount of inflation since that time, pre-COVID. And also to quickly review the village's current capital funding budgets to ensure that the village continues to be aligned with responsible asset management. Before I get into the details of the report, I just wanted to give a quick refresher on why asset management is important. There's a number of reasons. Here's 4 of them. Good asset management helps communities optimize value. Properly funded asset management programs allow for proactive maintenance, timely repairs, and efficient operations. Good asset management promotes long-term financial sustainability by identifying future asset replacement requirements, allowing proactive financial planning so that the village can ensure long-term financial sustainability. Asset management is also critical to maintaining service levels. A properly funded asset management program helps avoid emergency repairs and downtime. This ensures that service level expectations of the taxpayers are achieved. And finally, asset management also helps communities respond quickly in emergency situations such as unexpected infrastructure failures or natural disasters such as wildfire or flooding or other. So the asset management investment plan report seeks to answer these 5 questions. What are the assets that the village owns? What is the replacement value of these assets? What's the timing or approximate timing for the replacements of these assets? And then based on this, how much should the village be funding annually for capital replacements and renewals. In addition, we want to know from that information what the annual funding requirements are, the sustainable funding requirements, so that the village can maintain these assets and services in a sustainable manner. Okay, moving along. From a perspective of funding capital replacements, there's two main categories. You've got the assets that are funded through user fees, which is your water system. Then you have assets that are funded through general taxation, which is stormwater, which is culverts, manholes, stormwater mains, that type of thing. There's the roads infrastructure, which includes the pavements, sidewalks, retaining walls, signs, etc. And then the other category is like buildings and other assets. So that includes this building here, it includes vehicles, equipment, and miscellaneous parks assets. Okay, I'm going to move into some of the details here. So I've got a number of slides that give a snapshot of each of the different asset categories that I just spoke to. The first is the water system, which is funded through user fees. In this slide here, you can see that at the top of the slide is an inventory, or a high-level inventory of the assets that the village currently owns, which are part of their water system. So that includes 23 kilometers of water mains, 3 pumping stations, 250 valves, hydrants. You also have water services and pressure-reducing valves. On the left, I have a pie chart that summarizes the replacement value of the water system. And you can see that's about $26 million. Now, about 3/4 of this value is for the water mains, and the other quarter comes from the hydrants, services, facilities, etc. Moving over to the middle, I have a chart that summarizes the approximate condition of these assets. Since the majority of the water system assets are buried, they are very difficult to assess the actual condition. So for the purposes of this report, we have used the age of the assets as a proxy for the condition. So for the water system, you can see that based on age, 2/3 of the water system is expected to be in good condition. And this makes sense since your water system is relatively new. The PVC pipes that it's consist of last a long time, so we would expect that they'd be in relatively good condition. On the bottom, we have a chart that illustrates the approximate annual spending for the replacement of the water system. So along the bottom horizontal axis, we can see the executive years, and I'm sorry that's a bit small in the slide here. And then along the vertical axis, you can see the approximate spending. So from this chart, you can see in each successive calendar year what the estimated value of the replacements would be. But keep in mind, this is very high level, but it is useful because it does give an indication of when the spending is expected to be high, so that appropriate financial planning can be undertaken. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we are able to use the other information to calculate a sustainable funding level for the water system. This is the funding level that will ensure that the village is able to meet future replacement requirements without the need for sudden increases to user fees. Now, since the actual physical condition of the majority of the village assets is estimated from their age, the village does have a choice on how confident they are that the assets will achieve the expected theoretical lifespans. So I've got 3 options here. The conservative amount in the middle of $395,000 annually makes the assumptions the assumption that the water system assets will achieve the average theoretical lifespan that has been used for the study. If the village felt optimistic that these assets could last longer, then the optimistic funding of $356,000 could be adopted. Conversely, if the village feels the assets may not last as long, or that they desire a higher level of service, the very conservative funding level of $435,000 annually could be adopted. Now, given that the actual physical condition of the majority of the village assets is unknown, it is recommended that you stick with the conservative funding level at this time, at least until there is actual physical evidence that can be provided that would prove that the lifespans are either going to be longer or shorter than the expected lifespans. Okay, moving along, we have a summary of the stormwater system. So, similar layout as to the water system. So we can see that the assets within the storm system consist of stormwater mains, 3.4 kilometers, over 7 kilometers of culverts, 120 manholes, 115 catch basins, and 50 lawn basins. So all of this totals up to approximately $15 million. That's summarized here, and it's broken down by the, by the asset type here on the left. And you can see the bulk of that money, about 60% of the value is actually in the culverts themselves. The middle graph shows a breakdown of the expected average condition of these assets. And a bit of a different story here. You can see that approximately 3/4 of the village's stormwater assets are in either poor or fair condition. So the green part there is actually what's considered to be in good condition. So not as good condition as the water system, but that's to be expected. Considering the bulk of the replacement value is in the culverts, and a lot of your culverts would be like corrugated metal or concrete, they have a much shorter lifespan than the water system, which is mainly PVC pipes. So we'd expect over time those would degrade much quicker. Then again on the bottom, we can see the anticipated replacement timing, and you can see it's relatively even with some peaks and valleys through there. And finally, for the funding, I won't go through all 3 categories, but
Thank you.
if you were to, you're welcome. If you were to assume the conservative funding level, that would amount to about $384,000 annually. Okay, the road system. So you have about 20 kilometers of roads, 10 kilometers of sidewalks, and then miscellaneous other assets. I haven't listed here, but that would include retaining walls, signage, sidewalks, maybe other miscellaneous assets. The total value of those assets is about $20 million. And the bulk, I'm not sure if you can quite read that, but it's distributed between the local roads, MRN, sidewalks, and other assets. In terms of condition, we can see that about half of them would be considered to be in poor condition if you base the condition on age. Now, I know that you have budgeted for a pavement management study, I believe, coming up this year. So that will definitely provide a better indication of both the actual condition of those roads and the replacement costs and timing of that. Then along the bottom again, approximate timing of the replacements, and you can see it peaks and valleys as different areas of the networks need rehabilitation. And then on the right, the conservative funding level is, so we can quite see it there, about $664,000. Last one here before I summarize it for you. Okay, the last category, buildings. So this category consists of the hub building where we are today. It also includes vehicles, equipment, parks assets, and other miscellaneous assets that didn't fall neatly into one of the other categories, so a bit of a catch-all in some ways. And the total replacement value of these assets is roughly $15 million, with the bulk of that being here in the hub building. Well, this building's brand new, so it's not a surprise that 80% of the assets in this category are considered to be in good condition, and the other 20% is in fair condition. So good outlook in this asset category currently. And then here we can see the timing, approximate timing of the replacements. So keep in mind that this building itself is built of various systems. You've got electrical systems, mechanical systems, you've got the structure, you've got roof. So those all have different lifespans, so those are going to come up over time. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here in this chart. And in terms of funding, the report found the approximate sustainable fund level to be about $463,000 annually. Okay, thank you for bearing with me on that, the details. I'm going to summarize it here. So for those assets that are funded through taxation, you have about $49 million worth, 32% of which would be considered to be in poor condition. The assets funded through user fees, the water system namely, about 26 million. Much better condition overall, with only about 5% considered to be in poor condition. So in total, you have $75 million worth of infrastructure, and a little less than a quarter of that would be considered to be in poor condition. Oops. Slide here. In terms of the funding targets and where you currently stand on how you're funding the assets, the report found that for the infrastructure funded through taxation, a conservative funding target would be about $1.5 million, 1,511 exactly there. And interestingly, the actual proposed 2025 capital funding is almost exactly that number, at 1,510. So very good there. In terms of the water system, the report found a conservative funding target would be $395,000 annually. And I believe the current proposed 2025 capital funding is about $285,000. So there's a gap there of about $110,000 in the water system if you wanted to bring that up to in line with the taxation funded assets and be in the conservative category. For your reserves, you had an opening balance of about $8.2 million. That actually represents about 11% of the replacement value. So some observations. Well, we have a lot of infrastructure here, $75 million worth. Approximately 25% of it is in poor condition based on age. So that means a lot of that infrastructure is going to need to be rehabilitated or replaced over the next decade. That's going to take financial resources. The assets that you have that are funded through general taxation are currently funded at a conservative level. The water assets, though, are currently underfunded by that same Metch Park. The village does increase capital funding, I think generally, based on CPI annually, on an annual basis, so that's good, positive. And you have total capital reserves of $8.2, $8.3 million, which is a reasonable amount. So the conclusions or recommendations that we would have from the report is continue to increase funding by CPI annually. That's been serving you well since 2019. I would recommend that you do increase the water funding, so increase the funding of that above CPI over the next few years to be aligned with the taxation assets and reach that conservative level of funding of $395,000 annually. The current capital reserves are reasonable, but you should continue to build on these. So that would mean not spending more than your funding repeatedly over a number of years, and it'll happen in some years you're going to spend a bit more, but overall you should try to continue to build those assets, or those reserves. The study work that you're doing with the pavement management is very positive. That's going to help you really understand in a more detailed, more accurate manner the funding that's going to be needed for the roads network and the timing for those rehabilitations. And overall, my finding is that the village is doing a very good job funding their infrastructure and doing it in a very prudent, responsible manner. And you should continue with your current approach. So well done.
Good, thank you. Just one point of clarity before I open up to council to ask any questions on that. The 50-year amortization that you've done on a lot of the infrastructure, how does that compare to other municipalities?
Pardon me, what the
50-year amortization you have on the pipes and that you based your analysis on?
Yes.
The amortization, does that change and alter in different municipalities?
The amortization periods for the assets?
Yeah.
It can. It depends on the makeup of the assets. So a lot of other systems would have, for example, asbestos cement pipes. Those were very common during the 1960s. And we've experienced those to have a much shorter lifespan than PVC. Your system is primarily PVC pipe. So that puts you in a favorable position in terms of the lifespans of that infrastructure.
Yeah, I guess where I'm kind of leading to this is some of the road work. And you know, we've over the last probably 10 years, we've done an extensive replacement on a lot of the local roads, I'm going to call them, not MRN roads, and with that, we've taken out logs, stumps, and other debris that the roads were built on back in the day, and build them to today's, today's stature. And I would honestly say, on some of these roads, you could be looking at an amortization of 100 years. You know, long roads that have very few houses on them, like I'm going to say, for example, in Uplands and that, now that the base is there, most of the construction build out is there and stuff. So I guess that amortization could quite significantly fluctuate some of these numbers in a way, and it's sort of a service level that this council would want to would take into regarding making sure that we're fully funded.
Generally, in the valuation of the assets, we focus on the pavement service and not the road base, because the road base, if it's properly done, could have almost an indefinite.
The key word there, properly done. So anyway, I'll open up to council. Any questions? Councillor Weberink.
Is there a little bit more granularity to these categories, like the storm system? Did you evaluate every piece of storm infrastructure, and is that sort of listed somewhere as like this one's good for 10 years, this one's good for 30 years? And does staff have all that information?
There is a detailed spreadsheet that has every individual item in it listed individually, costed individually, with the lifespan listed on it. So that's available.
Perfect.
Urban Systems, I believe, did that. Was it for ISL?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Richardson.
very touchy up here. I don't know. That's meant to throw the consultants off, maybe.
Okay, so I really like the reports that were done 2018, 2019, and I've always been hoping that we would get a revision of that because it was easy to consolidate and actually look and move things around. It is very hard to reconcile this with those reports. So, you know, like Council Weber was saying, where are actually the real numbers? And I also compared your report from last July to now, and the numbers aren't the same. And they've gone down, and that quite bothers me because at one point last year, you're saying it was low and we were supposed to have 2 million a year. And now it's 1.5 million a year, and I can't see any number changes. So nothing here, to me, really lines up. I did notice that, like, when I read these graphs, you have 3 things on the top, but 5 things in the pie chart. And the names aren't the same. So you can't even reference what is what. And then in the one section, you have other twice. So is it the other or the other? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't follow it. I'm quite disappointed. Sorry if this sounds harsh. And then, like, there's a weird thing. You had the hub at one point at 10.4 million in that report. Now it's 8.5. I'm assuming one of the others is the 1.9 that you took out and put in a blue box. Like, it just makes no sense to me. Like, I don't get how we can use this. That's my problem. And I don't know what to do about it. But, like, here's a simple question. In the 2025 budget for Anmore, there's 400,000 that are going to the hub. Does that go in the blue other box, or does that go to the 8.5 hub box? Like, there's no way to work it out. So, anyway.
I'm going to just pass that last question over to Ms. Martin.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Richardson.
Mic closer, please.
Just pertaining to the hub, the 8.5 million was the construction value, and that is on a separate list from any improvements, which would include like the EV charger. So originally, it might have been grouped together of the hub building and the improvements, and we have separated that as it is on our TCA detailed listing.
So just for clarification, all $400,000 or other expenditures, like if they put the curtain in here, that's going to an other box, not the hub box.
Yes, that's called other because it has a different life cycle than this building.
It's a fixture. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I just wanted to, a couple of things I just wanted to say that I had a few notes here. You know, I actually was pleasantly surprised with your report, and especially with the fact that the building, it's one of those variables that we did not include, and we weren't sure how it was going to fit into it. So to hear that we're adequately funded, including the hub, is actually a good news story for me. I wanted to ask you, though, and your last point here, it says, overall, the village is doing a very good job at funding their infrastructure in a prudent and responsible manner. Do you say the words "very good job" to many other municipalities when you do these reports?
No.
No. And I hear it from my colleagues who are in an infrastructure deficit that they don't even know how they can get out of. And I will tout the council and staff of this community that we started this in 2009. And it was a tough pill to take. It was a 10% tax increase a year, compounded every year. And I'm incredibly proud of the councils that I've been on that started this and had the conviction to carry through with us through some pretty tough times, to putting us into position, I'm going to say an envious position of most municipalities in this province regarding our financial situation. So I really appreciate your report, and I wanted to thank you for coming. I realize that we're not into the granularity of what it was. This is an overview. It was very similar, kind of a follow-up to the report we had by Van Struth and that, which really got us on this path and identified the financial deficit that we were in and all the unfunded liabilities. So thank you very much, and again, have a great night, and thanks for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
We'll now move on to the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 18th, 2025. Could I get someone to move those minutes? Moved. second. Any discussion? Sorry, Councillor Richardson. Oh, we'll call the question. Oh, I better check on Councillor Trowbridge. Are you good? Yep, okay. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now move on to, is there any business arising from the minutes? No? Okay, I'll now move on to the consent agenda. Any council member who wishes to remove an item for further may do so at this time. Oh, Councillor Trowbridge.
Yes, I would like to remove 7C.
Okay. Anything else? B? Okay, okay, good. Okay, well, can I get someone to move the consent agenda for item number A, the CO attendance? Recommendation? Or, sorry, so could I get someone to move the consent, including 7A? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we're on to 7B, council meeting schedule amendment. I'll get the recommendation on that the 2025 council meeting schedule be amended for the months of May, June, and July 2025 to schedule meetings as follows: May 6th, May 20th, May 27th, June 10th, June 17th, and June 22nd. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, I actually am reasonably confused by this because all the dates are different than were proposed last council meeting. And it ends up in some really weird things like having 4 council meetings in 5 weeks. And I'm trying to figure out why. I'm going back to why this schedule is published. It's not for us. The schedule is published for the residents. And I don't think we should move things around, especially because I anticipate that in the May, June, July timeframe, that's when Icona is going to be discussed probably a lot. I think that's coming down the path. And to shift things around at this date, I think is wrong. So I'm actually against this on all fronts.
Okay. See no further question. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, item number C, the City of Port Moody early comments regarding the letter that was in our agenda. If it's all right, Councillor Trowbridge, before I put it to you, we'll get the agenda. We'll get the recommendation on the floor that the City of Port Moody early comments and Anmore Southlands official community plan amendment bylaw note be received for information. Could I get someone for receipt of information? Moved and seconded. Before I hand it over to you, Councillor Trowbridge, I just would like, staff hasn't prepared a report on this, so I'm going to ask staff to provide some, just some general comments before we have some comments. I also have some comments as well I would like to do, but I'll do that at the end. So I'll pass it over to Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So if I may defer to Mr. Savoy, who's here this evening, and he is the planning consultant who is leading this Anmore South project.
Thank you. So the reason that Port Moody is actually writing a letter, and maybe I'll just talk just a second about that. It's so the Village of Anmore sent the OCP amendment application to those people with, you know, after council's direction that they felt would be affected by the application. Yes.
I just want to make sure, Councillor Trowbridge, are you able to hear all right?
Yes, I can hear
Should I
fine.
talk
Thank
closer?
you.
Is everybody else all right? Or okay, yeah.
Closer?
Please. Yeah, thank you.
So there's a section in the Local Government Act that requires municipalities to do this, to consider this when you amend the OCP. So this is why it went to the City of Port Moody, because council felt that they could be affected by this application. So the whole purpose is really to hear from affected people, affected individuals, and affected organizations. And for all purposes, that is what was sent to the Village of Anmore on March 26th. They've given you their comments on how they feel the application could affect them. So just some general comments about the letter. So they're requesting, Port Moody Council is requesting an extension for comment. And there's nothing in the legislation to require Anmore Council to issue that variance or even specify if municipalities should ask for an extension. The purpose of this whole process, however, is to hear from affected cities. So, and what I point out in my report as item 11 is essentially if Anmore Council wishes to grant an extension, Council could consider an extension up to the end of the existing consultation period, which Ms. Mickelson is working on right now on behalf of the village, without impacting any timing whatsoever. Also, the technical reports are nearing mostly completed based on my report. One is nearing completion, so in a very near future, as you mentioned earlier, these reports will be available for public, and you could actually send these to the City of Port Moody for comment. So that's kind of a high-level reasoning. Is it unreasonable to provide a little extra opportunity for comment if council wishes to do so? There's no requirement to do so, but you certainly could do that if you wish to within this next month without affecting any timing anticipated on this application.
I guess a question that most of council is going to have, and I have as well, is I've never seen a letter of this detail. We have had, probably when you were with Port Moody, we had a letter come from when Flavel was changing a designation change, not a complete OCP, but just a designation change. We also, we did I think the recent 2 OCP amendments we've done was infill, and then of course the ones that we're working on now, and they were never this level of detail. So if you could just talk to that, because I think all the council is kind of curious of that.
So I did review the letter in detail. So the letter does, I think one thing difficult for people when they look at these applications is sort of an understanding of what you're asking, because this is an application to amend the OCP. The OCP is a general broad document that sets the vision to inform a future rezoning application. So this letter is quite detailed. It talks about a lot of things that likely would not be affected in a rezoning, in an OCP amendment application, but however, will be a point with the rezoning application when that's submitted. So it's a very detailed letter. We appreciate the input, but essentially some of the information in here is not completely applicable to the OCP amendment that we're processing.
That's what I thought. Councillor Trowbridge, you first.
Yeah, so
You want to go next?
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Tim, I can't see you, but I can hear that you're there, so I'm going to ask you a few questions, if I may.
Okay.
When I see this letter and I see what was asked, I see an inconsistency. So, for example, in the first paragraph of Mayor Laddie's letter to us, it talks about, it says that Anmore has requested input on the proposed official community plan amendment bylaw and the neighborhood plan. I don't believe that we asked for any input on a neighborhood plan. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that the neighborhood plan is not complete yet. So I'm not sure who would ask for input on a plan that doesn't exist. Does that seem to line up?
Yes, Councillor, you're 100% correct. We don't have the neighborhood plan drafted yet. In fact, the developer's consultant is working on that. I'll be working with them very closely to finalize that. But I guess there is some confusion in terms of we really asked them for feedback on the amendment to the OCP, which at this moment, of course, is the preferred land use plan that the council's seen. In addition to all the background material that's been presented and available on your website. So it really, and I think the thing to stress with this, these are early and ongoing consultations. So the idea in a simple way is, City of Port Moody, we're working on this application. Do you have any thoughts? It's not intended for a detailed technical analysis because, of course, that's what your staff will end up doing with their consultants at the right time in this process, which likely will be the rezoning application process.
Okay, and that makes sense to me. I appreciate that. It appears to me that being early on in the process and ongoing, as you mentioned, it appears to me that the letter from Port Moody, and I found it interesting actually because I saw it in the Port Moody agenda, and at the very end of the letter, in the agenda on the Friday preceding the meeting, it said that the City of Port Moody has received and requested a commitment, and it also talked about a motion was approved on the 25th, which was approving a motion 4 days ahead of it coming to the meeting, which I thought was fascinating. But that's another for another discussion. But essentially, based on what we've requested, which is some comments on the OCP amendment, it almost appears to me like we've received those comments in this letter.
Through the chair, yeah, and certainly the flavor of the letter, the concerns about traffic and the things that are highlighted are certainly good early input for Anmore. And I should mention that this is just the first opportunity, of course, because they could actually, the city could come to the open houses that are being scheduled. There will be an opportunity as part of the public hearing to again provide an official response to council to share their views. And further, if this bylaw moves to third reading and ends up being referred to Metro Vancouver, there'll be another process where Metro Vancouver will refer the amendment out to, it's an amendment to the 2050 Growth Management Strategy, out to affected municipalities again. So this is certainly not the last opportunity for anyone to provide comment. It's just one of the first opportunities.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. And I heard what you said, that if we wanted to be outreaching and I suppose generous in some ways, that we could extend it to the end of the consultation period without affecting our process or delaying it. And that's the consideration I'm trying to make. I certainly would be in strong opposition to having another municipality think that they should be somehow at the table in deciding about development or neighborhood plans within an adjacent community. That seems wrong to me, but I get the concept of, offering a certain concession for timing, and I'm probably okay with that. I'm thinking about it as we go, but I'm probably okay with that if it does not affect our process and timing. It seems, and again, addressing to you, Mr. Savoy, it seems that this letter was written more in the context of a municipality that would be considering their own development, not somebody's in an adjacent municipality. They seem to be getting overly involved in Anmore business. Is that I've never heard of this before. Is that fairly unusual, or is it commonplace?
Through the chair, and I'm sorry, I really was having a bit of a hard time hearing, but I think if I could just talk about the sort of the process that council, this will be one piece of the information that council is going to pull together to make a decision. So you're going to hear from all the people you listed on that list in terms of consultation. You're going to hear from the public in terms of your public engagement opportunities, people that come to the meetings, your technical reports, your staff, and at the end of the day, that package of information is what you're going to base your decision on. So the goal for everyone is to make sure you have the information available to make that decision. And you're right, Councillor. The City of Port Moody doesn't have any decision-making ability in terms of this application. This application is an Anmore application to amend your OCP. So certainly welcome the input, but no, another city doesn't have the veto power in terms of approving or not approving your applications on your OCP.
And I think
if I just one more before.
Yeah,
I know
we're
it's
having a
hard
tough. Councillor Trowbridge, we're having a tough time with your voice right now. So I do think that if you can hear me all right, I think that some of the questions that, as Mr. Savoy was just commenting, he's going to be referring to in his report later on the agenda. But if you could make a brief point, because we're having a little bit of a tough time hearing you.
I will. I'll wrap up quickly. Just one comment. Has someone advised Port Moody that this will, because they talk about the impact on their sewer and water distribution, and we have no intentions of this development tying into their system. Has someone advised Port Moody that there's no change to their system?
I don't know who to look to, Mr. Boyd or
Maybe I'll
Savoy?
start, Chris, and then you can. So we haven't had any detailed technical conversations because, of course, Mr. Boyd just recently received the final study. But there's been some general conversations at staff level. No specifics at this point, and perhaps, Mr. Boyd, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't believe that that's happened to date.
Yeah, the comments made by Mr. Savoy there are consistent. What I would say is that we've had general conversation between engineering departments, talking back and forth about this development, but no detailed information back and forth as of yet. As we come to the conclusion, the reports will provide it to Port Moody as we will provide it to everyone else at the same time.
It's first of all going to have to get through Metro anyway, and there's going to have to be a business case with that. So is that good, Councillor Trowbridge?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Weberink.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing here is maybe this letter is jumping the gun a little bit. There's going to be adequate time to gather all this information. It's great to hear their concerns at this point, but I guess my point, whatever time we need, we're going to take enough time to make our decision. Should be enough time for Port Moody. Would that be accurate?
To the chair, certainly, if this council is comfortable, yeah, there's, you can't really put that timing on anybody else. The reality is there's still time. We're still working through the process. Council still has lots of steps to do, as I highlighted my report that's at the end of the agenda. So there's opportunity for other inputs.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Councillor Richardson.
I take a somewhat different view. I'll start with our OCP, policy IOLU-3, which specifically states, should include joint discussions with the City of Port Moody. Not just sending a letter and asking for feedback, actually have discussions. That's our current OCP. I also watched the council meeting of Port Moody when they had this discussion, and it was a thoughtful discussion. In the letter that we sent to Port Moody, we talked about the neighborhood plan. We referenced technical documents which would soon be available, and they were not. So we've told them one thing in the letter, and we've actually failed to deliver. I would say we should write a letter to Port Moody, agree with the 2-month delay, starting from when the time the reports are available. I don't know when that is. It's not this week, I'm pretty sure. And go from there. And at the same time, invite them to all the things that are happening so they can provide feedback. That shouldn't delay us whatsoever, but this development, if it goes ahead, the greatest municipality it's going to impact is Port Moody through traffic. And I think we should be good neighbors. I don't think we should do this. So, and I actually believe that we should send the same letter to every other one who replaced or received the first letter. Come to these discussions. They're starting now. Here's the technical documents, you can read them now, and apologize for not having them available as promised in the original letter. Like, I don't know, it just seems insane to me. So I would actually move to amend just receiving this for information to actually responding to Port Moody, saying, yes, thank you, these are when the reports are due, and give them the 2 months, and invite them to everything else. And that is a move.
Pardon me?
That is a move to amend the current motion on the floor, which is to receive the letter and send a letter to Port Moody agreeing and inviting them to come to all the things.
Do I have someone to second that motion? Motion fails. Councillor Cryer. Sorry.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you very much, Mr. Savoy, for the very detailed information. I'm going to do what I don't normally do, which is repeat a little bit of what everybody else has said. That normally drives me crazy. But I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I know that there will be multiple opportunities to share these thoughts as we go through the process. So I have mixed feelings about the letter for a couple of reasons. One, everything they mention is very important, and that is very important to myself, and I think everyone else at the table. The items that they brought up. I also want to be a good neighbor, and I'm just a little puzzled by a few of the items. Councillor Trowbridge brought it up about our intent to not hook up to sewer and water, and I feel they started their first 3 points, things that are not actually factual, which was a little disappointing that they weren't in the loop on that, because I know that there were ample opportunities for them to know this. But I also feel that they did get in the weeds a lot, and one could argue that they have in fact given us their input already with what they have sent us in this letter. I also think it's very important that we don't let another municipality drive our decisions. We all could provide multiple examples of when other municipalities have done things such as that perhaps weren't the best for us. So I think it's important for us to stay in our lane and our neighboring municipalities to also stay in their lane. So I'm hoping that we can perhaps come up with a compromise, maybe do 30 days. It's my understanding that will not slow down the process or impede any of the work that's already started. So I'm hopeful that we could change it from 60 days to 30 days, giving them the respect for more time that they're asking for, and knowing that there will be ample time to have more input in the coming months. That's all.
Good, thank you. I'll just, I've got
Hello?
some.
Hello?
Oh, Councillor Trowbridge?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just want to make one point, and I'd like to address this to Ms. Elric. It was mentioned that the neighborhood plan was part of it. It is true that the neighborhood plan, the way I read it, is mentioned in Ms. Elric's letter, but there was no request for input on the neighborhood plan. If I'm incorrect in understanding that, Ms. Elric is the author of the letter. I would ask her to comment.
Ms. Albrecht?
Thank you. Through the chair, that is correct. The neighborhood plan was mentioned in the letter. However, there was not a specific request for feedback related to the neighborhood plan.
Thank you. And that is because it's not done yet. And as mentioned by Mr. Savoy, there will be plenty of opportunities to review in the future the reports when they're ready and published for everyone.
Good, thank you. So I had a bunch of comments. I spent most of the day actually writing some of this out because I kept reading the letter and kept bringing back different memories. And I just want to kind of carry forward with some of those. You know, the first thing that jumps out at me is the letter that we received on March 26th. They received it on February 26th, and you know, we haven't received, you know, no comments whatsoever as to, oh, we'll get to it or anything like that. I can also tell you I haven't even had a conversation with the mayor, who I sit on various seats, about this letter being forthcoming. So kind of shocking a little bit. But the area of interest related to Anmore South development referenced in the letter from Port Moody have been considered and addressed as part of the village's process. We do appreciate the City of Port Moody taking the time to confirm their understanding of the Village of Anmore development process and the related requirements. We have noted inference that the City of Port Moody would have influence over decisions made related to future development in Anmore as part of the water services, sewer connection, being Anmore Green Estates agreements. While we will certainly discuss servicing implications with Port Moody, this reinforces our importance for the Village of Anmore to have direct servicing from Metro Vancouver to the village to ensure independent decision-making. We've also noted their concerns about traffic, and we have a traffic impact analysis being done as part of our review process. It's also worth noting that future growth is not isolated to Anmore. As an example, while Anmore South develops, will generate an additional traffic. The proposed density of 2,200 units on 151 acres is relatively low when considering against the major developments underway in Port Moody, which I believe they're even discussing this evening regarding 3 towers, upwards of 40 stories. including the Inlet District development, which involves 2,600 units on 15 acres. I'd also like to make you aware when Burke Mountain initially built out at 15,000 units, and also a significant development of Coquitlam that's on the neighborhood of Port Moody's border. So traffic is going to be an issue for this region, not just Anmore. The referral process is part of an ongoing engagement, and the village intends to meet with Port Moody and discuss areas of interest related to Anmore South development. Regarding the request for additional time to review technical studies, City of Port Moody staff can take time required to review the technical studies during our Phase 3 community engagement process, and they will be able to provide comments at our public hearing. But they will need to be received by the deadline for that process and strictly related to an OCP amendment process. You know, we do appreciate the consideration, the time taken by the City of Port Moody in this detailed response, but the Village of Anmore assures the City of Port Moody the village's staff are well aware of the process and requirements to support the proposed changes to land use of Anmore South lands, including requirements for an environmental impact assessment, stormwater management plan, and services like fire response. Once technical studies are complete, as we said previously, or as Mr. Savoy said, that we will putting them online and making sure that everybody is aware of them. I've always said we look forward to broader regional discussions with hope to learn more about how Port Moody is planning to address the increased traffic generated by new developments within the City of Port Moody that will affect our local community and surrounding areas, such as Belcarra Regional Park and Bunsen Lake. Really looking forward to hearing from them about that. Because again, with no parks and no added green space being added to these spaces and all this densification, there is going to be a significant impact. And I'm surprised to note that Port Moody has indicated that David Avenue should be included in the municipal road network within its borders, given the decision to close David Avenue connector for the creation of a park. However, we were pleased to see Port Moody recognize David Avenue as an MRN that connects communities, as it is a good option for both communities in the future to address some of the city's concerns related to traffic congestion. The Village of Anmore Council believes it's imperative to have direct connection to Metro Vancouver services like water and sewer to facilitate decision-making, and and I've already repeated that. This will also avail us an opportunity to get better rates from Metro Vancouver on our water rather than being upcharged, being delivered through Port Moody. Transit, another key thing with Village of Anmore will discuss matters of public transit directly with TransLink, as the City of Port Moody is not the authority responsible for providing this service. And I think the last thing I just wanted to say, which was it's important to point out that Port Moody never asked this council for comments when they redesigned Burt Flynn or redesignated Burt Flynn Park in their OCP. They never asked us any comments. They also never asked for comments when asked from us whether to proceed to remove the long-established David connector, which proposes a significant traffic route connecting all of the Tri-Cities, including Coquitlam. There was never a mention and never an ask coming to us. So I just want to put things in perspective, but I am looking forward to working with our partners on both sides, Belcarra and Port Moody, in regards to moving this forward. I do have a bit of a rough timeline, but I'm not going to discuss it at this point. This is just simply receive the letter, and I will get into it in more details when we listen to Mr. Savoy's report. So with that being said, I'll call the question. All those in favor for receipt?
Point of information first, please.
Yeah. What is your point of information, please?
The OCP amendment that we're doing, because I'm confused by what people said, includes the neighborhood plan, does it not? They're not two separate things.
Thank you. Through the chair, the OCP amendment will include the neighborhood plan in the future. However, the neighborhood plan is not complete at this point in time, and therefore we would not be seeking input on a plan that is not complete.
I'll call the question. All those in favor of receipt? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Savoy and Ms. Elrock. We'll now move on to 9A, legislative reports. Oh yeah, no, I got it. Okay. Parking regulations and enforcement bylaw, highway regulation bylaw, fees and changes bylaw, and bylaw notice. That report dated March 28th from our bylaw officer and Ms. Elrock.
Thank you. So in February, Staff provided a report to council regarding some updates related to parking within the village of Anmore. And these bylaws before you this evening are a result of direction received by council at that meeting. So essentially, there are 4 bylaws in front of council this evening. The first one being the parking regulation and enforcement bylaw, which includes some housekeeping updates, as well as a map update, which is included on page 25 of the agenda package for your reference. Next, we have the highway regulation bylaw amendment, which is applying consistent language between the parking regulation and highway regulation, as there is several inconsistencies identified right now, and also updating some definitions for clarity. Thirdly, we have a fees and charges bylaw before you this evening, introducing a weekly parking permit in addition to daily parking permit availability, which is to facilitate better control and regulation of parking within the village. And lastly, the bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw, which has some housekeeping amendments and additionally aligns the fines between the parking regulation bylaw and the highway regulation bylaw, as there are several inconsistencies currently. So I do have a recommendation, and Mr. Cormier, our bylaw enforcement officer, is available this evening for any questions. So the recommendation would be that bylaw number 710, parking regulation and enforcement bylaw amendment bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading. That bylaw number 711-2025, highway regulation bylaw amendment bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading. The bylaw number 713-2025, fees and charges bylaw amendment bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading. And finally, that bylaw number 712-2025, bylaw notice enforcement amendment bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading.
Okay, moved, seconded, open up for discussion. Councillor Webber.
Looking at parking regulation enforcement bylaw 308, that's not listed under the recommended options. Am I missing something?
Through the chair, the amendment to parking regulation bylaw 308 would be the bylaw amendment 710.
Okay.
So that is the map amendment, and that starts on page 23 and continues on through page 28 of the agenda package.
Okay, so I'm kind of opposed to removing more parking in the village. It's just turning into a big no parking zone. And I know it's troublesome for people that, you know, have parties and have friends come over and they want to park in the street. I'm just sort of opposed to creating more no parking zones. I think we need a few areas where people can park. And you know what? If it's on a sunny day and people can find a place to park for Bunsen Lake, so be it. I'm not proposing opening up all the roads, certainly near Bunsen Lake for that sort of thing, but I think we're being more restrictive, and I'd like to be less restrictive, so I would be opposed to bylaw 710.
Councillor Richardson.
So 2 quick items. It's strange that the map shows roads that don't actually exist. So the one that goes through the Icona land is a bit weird. It's nice that we can park there, but as the road's not there, it's challenging at best because of the trees and everything else.
Sorry, I just think Chestnut goes through.
No, it's the one that goes through here.
Oh, Ms. Elric?
Through the chair, that is a right-of-way, so it does show up on our village maps.
It is a right-of-way, but it's not actually a road.
That is correct.
And then 7.H, like, I believe bylaws should be somewhat succinct. We can't park within 30 meters of a railway crossing. I haven't seen one in Anmore, so I don't know if that needs to be put in there. And then overall, I'm kind of with Councillor Weverink on this. Like, when I look through the map, and some guys get parking and some guys don't get parking, I understand there's some history with respect to Bunsen Lake on the summers and everybody crowding down and all over the place. But I have no rhyme or reason on why it's this way. And I looked for documents to see why it's this way, and I couldn't find one. So are we gonna chop some more? Yes, health and safety, sharp curves, no parking. But I'm kind of with Councilor Everink that, why are we this way? I don't understand the history, but.
Ms. Elrick?
Thank you. Through the chair, I can address the changes to the map that were previously presented to council. So the changes in terms of the Schedule A, which is the parking map, is to remove resident parking on Sunnyside Road. That is a result of the extension of the multi-use pathway and parking no longer being available in that area. Removing the north side of elementary resident parking and updating the south side to note as resident parking. Adding parking on Ridge Mountain and Kinsey, adding Ridge Mountain Drive and Kinsey Drive to no parking, as there has been some safety concerns identified there. Add Hummingbird Drive to no parking, as there currently is signage indicating that there is no parking, which is inconsistent with the map, and adjusting the Ravenswood parking. So those are the changes to the map that are changes from the current map.
Any further comments?
If,
Councillor Trowbridge.
just briefly, so what I heard Ms. Elrick say is that aside from sort of correcting the map with what's going on, there isn't anything significantly added except for a safety issue. Is that what I heard?
Ms. Elrick?
Through the chair, yes, the map updates are not significant, I would say, but do address safety concerns, particularly on Ravenswood and Ridge Mountain and Kinsey, and additionally related to the multi-use pathway continuation on Sunnyside.
Any further?
Thank you.
Anything? I'll just make a few comments. You know, we have had huge parking issues, and I think it is really, the changes on here are insignificant. I was actually going to ask for 3 other additions that may be on here, and I was hoping maybe not on this bylaw at this point in time, but just that we can put under watch, and that is the Magnolia. Because of the narrowness of the street, quite often on Magnolia, you're seeing cars parked on sidewalks, and I've heard a lot of people complain about that. I've also wanted to think that we're going to have to address the Cordovato subdivision when it comes on board, which is not going to be that long, I would imagine, as they're progressing. And that we'll have to address that. And then the third one was on map number 28, and that is Dogwood, another narrow street that's right next to the middle school, which people have asked me as well about concerns about parking there. And I just wanted to ask Sean, our bylaw person, if he's had any, especially Dogwood and Magnolia, if you've had many complaints or many issues there, or if you monitor it even.
So far, no complaints necessarily. I have noticed that there is parking that happens there. It's kind of been corrected a couple times going through it. Frequently, there's not that many vehicles that cause issues there. I know it may differ depending on school pickup times. I'll also add just back to the map for Schedule A. There was no major significant additions. All this no parking does exist, aside, like Ms. Ulrich stated, on Kinsey and on Ridge Mountain, as just addition for the constant traffic and trucks going up and down these streets right now. We've had residents already speak to us about that and mention it to me multiple times. So those additions are there. Magnolia has not yet been considered, but I understand your concern there for the other streets mentioned.
Yeah, and where this really precipitates becomes a big issue as well in snow clearing as well. I think that we need to realize it, but also the with the fire department as well, because some of these streets, again, if there's 2 cars parked on them, you can't even get a vehicle through. So I'm certainly going to support this these housekeeping measures in regards to updating this. But is there anything for? So It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the question on all as a group. Those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to, I guess this is 9B, 2519 East Road Development Variance Permit, DVP 2025-02. Report dated March 28, 2020 from our planners attached.
Cryer.
Councillor Cryer, sorry.
I will recuse myself from this conversation. That is our neighbor, and we are also considering infill on our property right down the street.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll just wait a minute. Okay, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So yeah, this report is in regard to DVP 2025-02, which staff received DVP regarding 2515 East Road. So at the March 18th regular council meeting, bylaw 666-2023 was adopted to rezone 2519 East Road from RS1 to infill development. So staff received a development variance permit application to vary section 9.20.5 of the Anmore zoning bylaw to reduce the interior side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.36 meters, a variance of 64 centimeters, to accommodate an existing single-family dwelling on the lot. So the existing dwelling precedes the village zoning bylaws and is considered non-conforming, a non-conforming building, and may be maintained, extended, or altered in accordance with section 529 of the Local Government Act. Rezonings may occur for parcels with non-conforming buildings. However, an approving officer may refuse a subdivision plan if they do not meet all zoning requirements. So staff recommend that council consider the DVP so that the dwelling unit can formally comply with the infill zoning regulations. A DVP notice would be placed on title of the lot and would eliminate any further uncertainty regarding the dwelling unit, and also eliminate any potential obstacles for future subdivision and development of the site. So the motion on the table tonight is that staff be authorized to issue notice of council's consideration of DVP 2025-02 to affected properties. Thank you.
Can I get to moved? Seconded? Seconded? Yeah, this is literally 2 feet that is in our, that was not even, the house was built prior to 65, so was not even in our zoning bylaws, and it infringes on it 2 feet. So any questions, comments? Councillor Richardson.
2 quick questions. This becomes a DVP, so it's not that it's a legally non-conforming house. That lot will be forevermore zoned with the 2.36. So if they rebuild or it burns down, they can also go to the 2.36?
Through the chair, the draft DVP that was drafted by staff actually just specifies the house as current on the lot is basically burying the DVP. No other further developments will, the DVP will not apply to further developments in the lot, just the existing house.
If the house burns down, they need to put it back to the provided setbacks within the zoning bylaw.
And adhere to today's building code as well. Okay. See no further questions. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. If you could get Councillor Cryer. Okay, we're now on to 9C, 135 Oak Court, Development Variance Permit DVP 2025-01, report dated March 28, 2025, from our planners attached. Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So at the March 18th, 2025 council meeting, staff were authorized to notify affected properties of council's consideration of DVP 2025-01. The notice was issued and 1 response was received by staff. So the request proposes to vary section 5.12.3 of the village zoning bylaw to increase the height of portions of a retaining wall from 1.8 meters to 3 meters to act as a rockfall hazard wall within the upper portion of the lot. Additionally, the request proposes to vary section 5.12.4B of the zoning bylaw by reducing the separation between two retaining walls from 1.2 meters to 0.75 meters to accommodate a septic field to the southeast corner of the lot. So staff received written comments from the adjacent landowner expressing concerns about potential water drainage towards their property resulting from the rockfall hazard wall. Staff note that drainage infrastructure has been incorporated into the design of the retaining wall. And staff have referred these comments to the building official for their comment. So the motion on the table tonight is that council issue development variance permit DVP 2025-01 to vary section 5.12.3 and section 5.12.4B of the Anmore zoning bylaw number 568/2017 to increase the maximum retaining wall height from 1.8 meters to 3 meters and to decrease the minimum separation distance between two retaining walls from 1.2 meters to 0.75 meters for 135 Oak Court. Thank you.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for any discussion?
I
Councillor
will be
Richardson.
happy to see this go away. I don't like the way it was handled, but it's been here every meeting forever, and we're killing trees printing the stuff, so.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up to the letter that was supplied by Ms. Tanya Yang. Has that been fully addressed?
Yeah, through the chair. Excuse me. Yes, that drainage will not be discharged onto the private property. It'll have to go to the one single discharge from that property to the appropriate location.
Okay.
They will not be allowed to discharge onto the neighbor's
Okay.
property.
We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to number 11, 11A, the draft 2025 budget. Report dated March 28th, 2025 from Manager of Financial Services attached. Ms. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening to Mayor and Council. We're just here to, can you hear me? Let's move this. Is that a little bit better? Can you guys hear me? We're sharing
A
microphones
little closer
today.
if you can.
A little bit better? Okay, let's try that. I'm trying to look at two screens and a couple of reports, so bear with me. So we're here to provide a 2025 review of the budget. This is in follow-up to our Finance Committee meeting on November 12th, 2024, where we met to discuss the 2025-2029 five-year financial plan. So at that meeting, each department provided an overview of responsibilities and challenges, and we also discussed the different capital projects that we're bringing to the table and what that tax impact might look like. And at that meeting, we did come back with just over 8% tax increase, and staff took some of the comments back and have adjusted the budget to, and also with our current economic condition, to reduce that tax impact a little bit. And we also saw some increases in our non-market change. So I just wanted to go over some key highlights that we've changed from the Finance Committee meeting. And for that, I've got a little slideshow that we could just go through quickly. So we can go to the next one. So this slide just shows us some of the key changes from last year to this year. And we'll go over each of these points as we go through the slideshow. If it's okay if I can go through the slideshow and then we can talk about things after. So some of the main things that happened between 2024 and 2025 is our MFA loan interest that we have covered in 2024 with our stabilization reserve. We have reduced that allocation this year slightly. So some of that loan interest will now come from taxation, whereas before it was coming from reserves. We've also added some revenues for the rentals in the building, though that is just starting to come up, so we're not estimating a big charge for that. We did see some small changes to our grants from our MRN roads, so we have updated those values and our grants in lieu of taxes. And then we've also increased our building permits based on our audit of building permits. So we saw that we could increase that estimated revenue coming into the village. Now, on the other side of that, our operating, we reflect a 3.2% CPI inflation in most of our operating budget on an annual basis. So that effect has an effect on staff and merit. We also added an additional full-time staff member in 2024. On the flip side of that, there were some savings to be seen in our staff. So there was some more wage recovery in that we were able to recover wages through building recovery. We also had some long-term staff retire, and our renewal staff that have come in are newer to municipal, so they come in at a lower level. And then our committee support that we had budgeted for a contractor has now been taken over by staff, so there's a savings in the budget there as well. We also did some small increases to the scholarship. We saw some large increases for our municipal hall insurance, which we'll talk about later. We saw some increases to our utilities, going from a little portable to a big building. There's obviously some changes in our utility bills that are coming in. We have a new service on the table for discussion, and that is an animal shelter agreement. And then we have some other small changes within our operating budget. We also have a capital tax levy, which was discussed through our asset management. And the CPI effect of that is $41,000 or $42,000. And that is a 3.2% lift over last year's allocation for capital tax. Okay, next slide. Oh, sorry, can we go back one more? So just using that, those estimates, we were coming in at a 6.9% total increase, tax increase. And for the average homeowner, that would be $253. So one of those first things that we talked about was our MFA loan stabilization reserve. What we've done in our 5-year plan is in 2024, we covered the interest payments for the loan 100%. So there was no tax impact on your 2024 for the interest. And then over time, over the 5 years, we are slowly decreasing that allocation. So in year 2, which is 2025, we're going to see a tax impact of 1.4%. So that is that top line. And that's based on our average 1% equaling $29,460 of tax value. So over time, after we get through 5 years, you can see how those two lines meet together. And after 5 years, that will be fully incorporated in the budget. So we are going to use reserves over 5 years to decrease the impact on taxation. Okay, next slide. When we talk about the MFA loan, so we took out a small loan for the hub, and that was so we had all users contributing to the building of this hall. Rather than using just reserves or just grants, we have a very small allocation that is for future users. So from today forward, all the residents that are currently using the building will also be participating in paying for its replacement and renewal. So at this time, as the stabilization reserve reduces, we will be slowly moving a small portion into taxation, but it is a small portion. Now, the MFA loan that we took out was signed for 2024, and it is a 10-year first term, and then 5-year terms after that. If we choose, council may choose to pay off the loan in full at any of those term ends. Next slide. So here are just some of those changes that were on the previous slide, showing how the effect on the operating budget. So some of those have increased taxation and some of those have a decrease on taxation. And as we stated before, a 1% tax increase is if you want to have a comparable, it's averaged to $29,460 to the budget. So a 1% tax increase or a 6% tax increase is only $194,000 to operating. Now, from that operating of $194,000, you can see that that loan interest that we've added to the budget, the insurance, those two things alone have added a value of about $85,000. So that is a big piece of that increase. And then we have a new staff member, and we have kind of a rounding of other things that have gone up or down within the operating budget. And then the addition to the capital tax of $42,000, and then the new service of $15,000. So water and solid waste, we've already seen these bylaws come forward. These are fee-for-service and mostly managed through purchase of service agreements. So we saw an increase of 15 cents on our water fees, and we'll go through that a little bit more a little bit later on. So that is equal to a 4.5% increase. And our solid waste fees went up $20 annually, which is 5.3% of the budget. Or sorry, of your user fees. So we wanted to talk about non-market change. This is from building and development, and this is for parcels that didn't exist on our roll previously. So they have added tax dollars to our roll. So every year in budget, we reset the rate to match our last year's budget. And this would be a value that would be an add-on to that budget. So we saw just over 1% increase of non-market change to the roll this year. Okay, so these are just some quick revenue changes that we saw between 2024 and 2025. The biggest changes are highlighted in yellow, and that would be a slight increase for permit fees and rentals for the building. And then we saw a decrease in our interest, our investment interest, and that's just due to investment rates that are going down, as everybody has seen the markets. If we move into our general operating, some of those highlights are our insurance costs have gone up. We also saw that we've adjusted our budget for engineering and planning. So we've reduced the budget for engineering here, and this has gone to planning instead. And this is also where you see the $10,000 reduction for that got moved into staff. And then we also have a records management project in here, and that is funded from reserves. That's not affecting taxation. For planning and development, here's where you saw the move from general government for the $20,000. The consulting is for planning consulting instead of engineering consulting. And then we also have our OCP update project here, and that is funded from grants and reserves. Protective and inspection, so this is a bylaw and building. So we can see here that there's our bylaw officer was moved fully into this service area, and they used to be funded under the Public Works. We also have $132,000, so those are two projects that are funded from grants and reserves. And then the bylaw expense reduction was just our DCC bylaw that was moved from expenses to consulting. Okay, so Public Works, we can hear the salary and benefits. There was a reduction by moving the bylaw officer over to protective services, and then there was an increase by adding the new full-time person here. And then we've also added a small value to increase our dangerous trees, which you see it better up there, which seems to happen a little bit better. You guys have printouts too if you need them. In our water system, you see change in our water contract. So The water system is mainly run by contracted services. So as we went through our audit this year, we found that our contract, or what we paid for water, has gone up. And we also are estimating an increase for hydrant maintenance that hasn't been done in the last couple of years. So we are doing some major hydrant maintenance in 2025. Now, talking about the water rate, Metro Vancouver has posted their water rate bylaws, but for 2024, for example, they have a blended municipal rate of 0.9333 meters, and that's what's billed out from Metro. However, we pay for water at 1.44. So that's just what the mayor was discussing about. As we receive our water through Port Moody, there's an upcharge to receive it that way. Now in 2025, Metro Vancouver has passed their bylaw to increase their water rate by 0.066 cents per meter squared, but we haven't received our newest Port Moody rate, so we don't know yet what that's going to look like. Solid waste, this is fully by contract, and as you can see, based on our 2024 actuals, we saw a large increase there. So this number is just CPI on top of what we paid last year. Okay, capital projects. So all capital projects are funded from reserves, and this is part of asset management. So there's new and there's also renewal. So some of these projects will be renewal projects where we're maintaining our assets, and some are improvements or new assets. The capital projects that are in black are all projects that are multi-year and are continuing. Some have completed and some are continuing into 2025. And then we have a few small additional projects in red. And then for our water fund, these are just continuing projects. There are no new projects on our water fund. Some of our reserve balances that we talked about in our asset management. The NS is our non-statutory grants and reserves. So a lot of these are for specific projects in our budget, and they get moved into our revenues as we use them. And then the statutory reserves are things for our capital asset improvements and new capital assets. And then DCC roads, this is a bylaw that we have in our plan to work on a new updated DCC bylaw. And these are reserves that are taken at building, and we're to use under specific rules to use for capital projects for roads, drainage, and water. Okay. Would you like some questions from this slideshow?
Any questions? Councillor Weberink and then Councillor Richardson.
Sorry, that's okay. Sorry, bear with me for a second.
Should we go to Councillor Richardson
Go to
first?
Councillor Richardson.
Councillor Richardson.
Few questions. What is the actual rate that the GVWD is going to charge for water?
It was on there.
So
No, that's the increase. It doesn't say.
So the actual rate from Metro, they've added 0.0006 to the 0.99. I think it's 1.05. It was I think it was a 7% increase from Metro this year.
Doug, it was on there. It was 0.93. That was the
And that's a blended rate, peak in summer and fall. Okay.
So this
understand
is
that.
the blended average.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then Port Moody charges electricity to run the pumps to bring it up to us, but they don't charge any capital as in the pumps themselves. Is that true?
So they charge us a rate plus an electrical rate. So our metered rate is not the same as the metered rate that Metro charges out at.
I'm aware of
It's
that.
an upcharge. So what we've done is we've taken the value that we paid divided by the amount of meters that we purchased, and we've come up with an average rate.
And then did we get the grant for water meters? Because Lions Bay got $4 million.
Unfortunately, we did not get that grant.
Okay. And for the PV or PW vehicles and machinery, I'm assuming most of that is the dump truck? And what's the other 200?
There are 2 vehicles left, I believe, in that budget. I can look that up for you, just one moment.
No, she's just looking something up, sir. Did you find your questions?
So for the capital continuing for the public works vehicles, we still have the dump truck, and we have the, I don't know if it's the, I think it's the road brining system that's in that budget still, because I believe we got the F-550, yes.
So like not the truck and not the spray, but the mixing or something like that?
I'll have to ask maybe
We
for-
already, one of the trucks came with the brine system on the back of the truck. This is the mixing system and the dump truck.
There were 3, so there
Yeah.
were 3 items in that capital project. It was the road brining system, the F-550 truck, and the dump truck. And I believe we've already received the F-550 truck in 2024.
Is that Councilor Richardson or? Oh, Councilor Webrink, you're up.
Okay, I had the same question about the vehicles, $648,000. We're spending a lot of money on trucks and vehicles. Just a comment, I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. Page 68, grants. I'm going to give you a line. So GFCAP MRN infrastructure grant, $115,000. So is there a specific thing that's going to be spent on?
Yes, so the MRN grants are, we receive an operating and rehab grant. I think that's what you're looking at. And that is offset by staff wages, so we get to recover staff wages. We also recover expenses used to maintain those roads, and that would be so for East Road and for Sunnyside Road. So
Okay.
it's basically a grant of recovery, so it's a way to get some of that money back.
I see, so it's not specific for anything, it's just to maintain our MRN
It is an
roads.
ongoing grant based on how many miles of MRN grant we have, or
Okay, so
kilometers.
it's not, okay, I get it. Hasn't changed then. Page 68, Ravenswood Drive budgeted, but no extra parking for the hall budgeted. So I'm assuming that's the alignment for Ravenswood that we've got budgeted?
As far as I know, that is yes. They're nodding over there. I'm the numbers girl. Chris can
That's
answer
just
to
the
the
road,
what's in the project.
Not site development.
Right, no, I understand that. And I'm just wondering if we're putting the cart before the horse. Like, I wonder if we should be, doing the parking before we do Ravenswood if we've got money for that area.
We've just started doing a PR campaign about asking people what they want for the park and actually putting some focus on the park as a whole entity, which will include parking, realignment of Ravenswood Drive, play gear, and all sorts of stuff, playground equipment.
Okay, I'm just concerned if we have limited budget,
Yep.
we could still go through that process, but then maybe prioritize that money for something we need more than Ravenswood. I mean, I want it all, but I just want to make sure we're doing everything in the right sequence. Okay, and a question, where is there a bridge on Mountain Air Lane? I see a bridge, Mountain Air Lane.
So as far as I understand, it is like a footbridge, like a pedestrian type bridge. It's a wooden bridge that needs to be replaced.
It's over the high-pressure gas line right at the very end, right at where the gate is.
Oh, there. Oh, that's actually considered Mountain Air Lane past the
Yep.
gate?
Yeah, there's a 5-acre parcel on the other side of that is,
Okay.
yeah.
I get it. Okay, that's it. Thanks.
I don't see anything from Councillor Trowbridge, so I'll just finish up with a couple comments. The big thing is the shelter, the dog shelter, the animal shelter. That's $15,000. Years past, we've had biscuits and we've kind of kept animals here until we find owners. But as we grow, that's becoming a little bit challenging, and some of them don't really want to be inside. And be petted and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's an important thing. I think we're lucky to get in with the Coquitlam in regards to that. You know, I will tell you that from my colleagues, you know, even Coquitlam is almost identical to this number as a tax increase, and other municipalities as well. But what they are doing in some of the bigger municipalities like the Surreys and the Burnabys and stuff is they're doing their tax rate. Then they're actually doing a separate capital levy added onto it, which brings them all up to this about amount. So it's really reassuring that we're all in one, and to come in at 6.8 during these tough times. But it's, I think the pressure, as I will talk to a little bit more in my mayor's report, is going to get even more and more. I think the financial situation that the senior governments put themselves in is going to trickle down to us. So I'm glad that we're in the financial situation that we are to be able to weather this storm that's going to be coming forth, because I think grant funding coming forward is going to be very, very challenging to get. I will add, though, that's been a pretty big success and a pool of money that we've been able to accumulate is the infill. And at some point, we're going to have to figure out what those funds, you know, they were initially proposed to be coming towards the village hub. There may be an argument at some points in time saying that we take some of those funds and pay off some of the debt towards the village fund, or do something else, whatever, but that'll be a council decision at the time. But I know that that is starting to accumulate somewhat. So very, very pleased. I'm happy. You know, I think the residents are getting good value for this, and I think it shows the financial plan over several years that we're not facing these big increases and that. So with that being said, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Can we also add the second piece? So we have a full recommendation that the draft 2025 budget be received for information, and that staff be directed to present the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw and 2025 tax rate bylaw at the following next regular council meeting.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move on to Anmore South, status of OCP amendment application, Anmore South, report dated March 28th, 2025 from our planning consultant. Mr. Savoy, you're back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this being my first meeting, I'm not 100% sure how your council wants to operate, so I'll do a quick high-level summary if that's okay.
Sure.
So this report is intended really to provide council and the community with just an overall status update generally of where we are in the process. And the process is, as everyone knows, is an amendment to the official community plan. So in accordance with phase 3 documentation included in your terms of reference, council in February passed a number of motions that resulted in the early and ongoing consultation regarding section 475, which we sent notification out to all the individuals and groups identified in council's motion on page 2 of the report. A lot of things have been completed to date. Of course, that notice has gone out. We're receiving feedback back. Of course, council had the request for extension tonight from City of Port Moody. As well, we've reached out to the school district. We have to do that in accordance with section 476 of the Local Government Act. And those conversations are ongoing as we work through this process before we get to public hearing. So the technical studies that there's been a lot of discussion about, the majority have been submitted, reviewed, and accepted by village staff. There's one outstanding report, which the fiscal analysis, impact analysis report, which I understand is coming very imminently. And then we will review that in terms of from the village perspective. Phase 3 community engagement consultation. Ms. Mickelson is here. I don't know if you want to provide a highlight of where we are. Sure.
So as everyone knows, the community engagement follows the completion of the studies. So what we've been doing is working in tandem to get as ready to go as we can, so that as soon as all the final reports are in, we'll be able to do the final content for things like the direct mail and open house boards. In the midst of that, we've also completed the drafts of things like the community survey and have been working towards the notification materials. So we're trying to get as ready to go as we can so that when we get the final report, we can all work together and move it forward as quickly as possible for an engagement that is outlined in the Phase 3 engagement plan that we gave you. And it would be about between a 2 to 3 week engagement period to complete all of that. So the summary here is really just a summary of what was in the Phase 3 engagement.
Thank you. So we've referred to it a little bit in the earlier conversations tonight about the amendments necessary to the official community plan. So council gave first reading to a bylaw early in the process, which was excellent in terms of directing staff to undertake the analysis required to amend the OCP. So now that that's happening, what will result is actually when we come back to council eventually, once we have the draft neighborhood plan, we'll be requesting that bylaw be rescinded essentially, because that bylaw really set up the direction to actually create the neighborhood plan and create all the bylaw amendments. So what will come back to council will be a number of amendments to the existing official community plan, specifically those sections of the plan that run contrary to what the application involves. So there'll be a detailed listing of things that need to be adjusted so that you don't create inconsistencies in the future, because what the legislation says essentially is once you've adopted the OCP, you can't approve a bylaw, you adopt a bylaw that's inconsistent with that document. So that'll be coming forward at some point at the same time, of course, before public hearing. So the report in the last bit, I talk about the next steps, and I won't read through these specifically, but essentially what they will involve is sort of finalizing all the amendments to the official community plan, and with that, drafting this new policy based on what we're hearing from the engagement plan. So it's really a parallel process. We're drafting the neighborhood plan, we're hearing from the community, so we're making adjustments and considering those aspects as we're drafting this new policy. Once we have that done, of course, then I mentioned we'll be coming to council, and that's a consideration for a rescinding of the original bylaw and rereading of this new bylaw. And then with that, I don't have to tell you about the process, running through your public hearing process that you typically would run through. So you're receiving all the feedback, we're drafting the amendments. Then once we're in a point where we have a bylaw drafted, you'll actually consider reading it first and 2 readings, and then scheduling a public hearing. And of course, then all the notification that happens as part of that process. So that's really what we're trying to achieve in this report, just provide you with a high-level overview of where we are. I think the process is running quite well. Engagement plan is robust, and the consultants working on behalf of the developer are excellent in terms of providing and responding to our concerns.
Good. Well, thank you, Mr. Savoy. You do have a recommendation for receiving the report for information. Before we get there, there's a few things I would like to firm up, and that is regarding with Ms. Nicholson here in regards to some timing and stuff like that. But before I get to that, I just wanted to stress something that I too listened into the Port Moody meeting this past Tuesday in regards to the consideration of the letter, and there was there was a couple comments made that I found a little bit disingenuous, and that was about the level of professionals that were involved in this application. And I found that very disheartening, because, and I just want to list out some of these. Some of these are world renowned. We have Bunton Associates, who is doing the traffic plan. They are, that is who everybody uses. Aquaterra Environmental, has had very high esteem from the provincial government. Alpin and Martin are the civil engineers on site, international. Deloitte and Coriolis are doing the economic thing. City Squared, who's also reviewing the retail. So I just want to rest assure the people in this community that we are some of the best are the professionals that are involved in evaluating. The fact that we're not getting good value is completely ridiculous. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, because it was a couple comments that were made during that meeting. So should we get the recommendation on first, and then we can do or actually let's just open up if there's any questions to Mr. Savoy at this point in time. Mr. Richardson, or Councillor Richardson, sorry.
I had a bunch of little comments all through here. So just going through your various things, and some of them are quite simple because I've tried to find the answer and haven't. When you give protected natural area and greenways of 35%, how much of that is actually riparian area which cannot be touched anyway?
So you're referring to the breakdown, developer's breakdown of the
Yep.
overall site plan? That is really just provided, so that's what's included in the preferred land use plan that the council considered as
Yep.
part of the early process. Specifics of that, actually, I don't really cover it in the report. In fact, we really haven't gone there yet in terms of the specifics. The developer will be we could provide all those types of details as that conversation comes forward. But right now, that was really just high level. This is what the application involves that was submitted to the village.
Okay. It's mentioned somewhere in here, low-rise apartments. What is actually low-rise?
So that's something that I think would be really good to define as part of the neighborhood plan. Typically, OCPs have land use designations with specifics in terms of what the village, what the city intends that to be. So in this case, low-rise is probably going to be, and we haven't, the developers here, I would suspect between 4 and 6 stories is what they'd be suggesting for low-rise apartments.
Okay, and then, but most of it's apartments and not low-rise, so is an apartment beyond 6 stories?
No. So this is one thing we have to be specific in the OCP and describe exactly what will be included in the land use plan, and that will follow as we go through this, because you're right. The community needs to know exactly what is being anticipated in terms of density, height, form, et cetera.
Okay, and then the last question is, when council did this, we were at 1,990 units. That was back in November. The brochure that went out was 1,990 to 2,200. And now it's officially 2,202. Where did the extra 212 units come from?
So through the chair, so I wasn't here during that time, but I can sort of say, and you guys could jump in. What I recall from looking at council's motion is there was a number of options available, and council's direction at that time was almost a hybrid of 2 options, a higher density and a lower density. And I think if I recall correctly, the motion of council was somewhere in the middle. So I think that's where the developer landed with the 2,202 units. Which we'd have to be specific about in the neighborhood plan.
Timing, like I read your list. I think Mayor McEwen is kind of interested in the same thing. When are all these things coming?
Ms. Mickelson will probably speak to that. I'll let you do that.
Let's just get some of the technical, and then I'd like to go through a timing thing. So, Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. I have a few questions, and also I want to start by saying I understand that we're receiving the report for information, but I'm hopeful that perhaps we can give some clear direction tonight to staff. So I know sometimes we confuse you. So I'm hopeful that maybe we can, specifically towards the timing, that Councillor Richardson mentioned. So I have all kinds of circles and stars and arrows, so I'm just going to jump around. So I spoke to clear direction. Now, of all of the steps, there are 13, I believe, steps that you laid out, next steps. Is it possible to give a general idea when you think we'll get through those steps and be able to send an application to Metro?
And we can, through the chair, I think this is likely achievable by June, I would think.
All right, thank you for that. It also says of these 13 steps that for the most part, the steps above are necessary. So I'm assuming some of those are mandated legislatively and some of them are just there. I'm wondering, I guess, I'm assuming the shorter list is non-legislative?
Through the chair again, I think most of the reason I put mostly down is because there was a few points like review the draft analysis. And once you move into the actual bylaw reading, essentially the Local Government Act specifies what we have to do. So for the most part, the items that would take the most time would be the statutory items.
Okay, very good, thank you. I have a question, Ms. Mickelson, about the survey. What types of, will we be able to review the survey before it goes out, or can you give us an idea of what questions are on there? I feel like we're really in the notify and inform stage of things. As far, I know I personally, we've had a very robust consultation process. Thank you very much, and your reports have been very good. So I'm wondering what this round of consultation, what you're looking for in this.
So to speak to the survey, there's a couple of reasons why we're recommending, sorry, through the chair, a couple of reasons why we're recommending that. Part of it is because we have actually not done anything quantitative to date. As part of my plan from the start, I advised council that I didn't feel we should do anything quantitative until we got to a point where we had a preferred land use plan with specifics that we could speak to the community about. And that is essentially the focus of the survey. So it's general questions that take from the preferred land use plan and to some degree provides a comparative to the existing zoning. So it's not a long survey. This is not a yes-no survey. It's not like an alternate to a referendum. That's not helpful. This is a council decision. What this is to ask questions of the community in a way that gets you a sense of some of these key areas such as mixed use of housing, dedicated and retained green space, commercial, those key areas of the preferred land use plan. And so one of the reasons why I'm recommending, or our team is recommending a survey, is because we have heard from council members who have specifically said that they want to hear that quantitative data, as well as from council members who have said very clearly they do not want open house input with sticky notes and dots. So this is essentially the primary way that we're going to be able to hear from the community about the neighborhood plan, because the preferred land use plan is that foundation document, and the neighborhood plan policy is what actually then forms from that. So this, other than the survey, we haven't asked people about the preferred land use plan, and that means that their only alternative beyond that would be at the public hearing. The other thing is we actually also heard from Anmore residents that a community survey would be one of their preferred mechanisms to provide input. So it's very much focused, though, on the key components of the preferred land use plan.
Okay, so further to that, the first two that you mentioned, dedicated green space and housing mix, I feel like that's already been defined by the applicant. So what, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like we have percentages here. Ground-oriented, multifamily townhome, multifamily apartment, percentages. I feel like that's defined.
That's not, sorry, that's not community input. That relates to what's in the actual preferred land use plan. So what we'd be asking people would be things like, how important is it to have a mix of housing? How important is it to have retained green space in the community? How important is it to have commercial? And part of it is also a ranking, because of course it's a trade-off. So what we'll hear, for example, sometimes from residents is, oh, I want to absolutely have as much green space as I can, but oh, by the way, I don't want any density. So that's a trade-off discussion. So is it important for you to have retained green space? Is it important for you to have multi-use, more than just single detached? And then it's kind of a ranking as well. So essentially what it does, all of this is intended to inform council about where's your community at with some of these key changes that are looked at in the preferred land use plan that is now being presented. Because the preferred land use plan that's been developed has absolutely been based on the first couple of phases of engagement, but we haven't talked to the community about the preferred land use plan at this stage.
Okay, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So further to that, I feel like the community has stated that they want green space and they want mix of housing, a mixture of housing. I feel like we've heard that. I think we as a council have discussed that we do need diversity in housing. So I don't personally, I can't speak for everyone, I don't need to hear the green space versus types of housing. mixed use, because it is going to be mixed use. I do want to know about commercial, amenities, that sort of thing. But I don't think we need to get into those bigger issues.
Well, that is, sorry, through the chair, that is entirely a decision of council. We're, as an engagement team, recommending that you do this community survey, but it is always at the discretion of council and your direction. If you choose not to do a community survey, that would just be direction that you would provide to us.
And I'm not saying we don't do a survey. I think we do a survey on the more, I don't want to say interesting, but the kind of the fun stuff, like, do you want a market? Do you want, that sort of thing is my understanding from conversations that I've had with you, that it was neighborhood plan related.
Yes, and so through the chair, I don't think we're at that level at this stage
I
of
don't
asking
either.
about what type of,
Right.
what time of market you want, what type of things
Right.
you want. This is literally the opportunity to provide input on the preferred land use plan, which, as I said, if we don't do a community survey, the remaining opportunity for the community would be through the public hearing.
Okay. I'm not so sure then with that description that we need a survey. That's just that's my feedback. And I think that's been my feeling for a couple of months, that we've had enough consultation on that sort of thing. So that's where I stand, and maybe this is something that can come out of tonight's conversation, that we have solid plans. Do we do it or not? And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a few comments then, because Councillor Weber doesn't have anything to say. So a couple things. I think it's important for this council to lay out a process tonight. June is a very, very busy time, and I don't want anybody to say, with graduations, with those sorts of things. I think this is of such an importance to this community. We need to make sure that we get the most feedback that we can. This council has clearly stated that we've told the proponent, this is what we will look at. We do need to get some feedback from the community on what they have proposed. But again, on the proposal, not, I don't want to hear, is this a good proposal? This is what we have put forth. So that being said, I will ask Ms. Nicholson her advice on this, but if I look at June 1st being something we want to stay away from, I think the last date that we could do, looking at this new calendar, a community, public hearing for this proposal would be May 27th. That's stretching out as far as we can. That's a Tuesday, last Tuesday in May. I would certainly want to have the community be made very, very much aware of this date and posting it everywhere so that we can get as much public input as we can. This is going to be where it comes for third vote. And I listened to Mr. Savoy in regards to the first and second reading. It's almost like a bit of a housekeeping issue to rescind our initial first two readings and just reestablish them with what is more applicable in the OCP. Is that correct, Mr. Savoy?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's essentially what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
rereading the bylaw
Yeah.
that you're going to be sending to public hearing,
Okay.
and the other one will be, you'll abandon it.
So looking at the calendar that was presented, I believe that could be done on around May 6th. That's a first meeting in May. And again, I'm just throwing these numbers out, and they are certainly up for discussion, but I thought we need to get something out on the table. So with that being May the 6th, further looking at the calendar,
Sorry, point of information, May 6th is what?
rescinding the first and second readings that are existing and putting the new ones in. Like it's in essence a bit of a housekeeping matter.
I thought we only had the first reading.
We've only given it first reading, Mr. Savoy.
Just, Mr. Mayor, so when council abandons the other bylaw and rereads this bylaw, you'll essentially be sending the neighborhood plan to the public hearing. That'll be your opportunity to see all the consultation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
So then further to that, so if we have May the 6th, have the open house scheduled. And Ms. Nicholson, I'm going to ask you for sometime at the end of April. And I would want to have all the proponent with all his expert people who I've listed out to be here to field questions from the municipality. I know traffic's going to be a big one, and have it hosted in here, have it sufficient time. What would the best date for that be rather than a Sunday? Because
So, so through the chair, just for clarification, I do want to qualify that while we are working towards those schedules, we don't have the final report yet. So
Yeah.
everything depends on that. We also do not have the neighborhood plan yet. So those things are key deliverables. So I just want to put that out there because I'm
Yeah.
speaking only from engagement.
Yeah.
What we recommend would be, yes, to have an open house. We recommend that be on a weeknight, not a weekend. We've heard from the Anmore residents who have said, don't do it on a Saturday or a Sunday because they're busy with their kids'
Okay.
sports and errands, and it probably feels like work. So we're looking at an evening at the end of April to do that. We also don't want to get too close to the federal election dates and stuff like that. So right now, we're looking roughly at around April 26th, but I can't commit to that date.
Yeah, April 26th is the Saturday, so it would have
Sorry,
to be
April 24th, sorry.
April 24th.
April 24th, yeah. And
It's-
I just can't confirm until
Okay.
we get that final study, but that's, so that's a tentative
Yep.
date that we're looking at because we're trying to get that in. As I mentioned, the engagement process itself is like a 2 to 3 weeks. I do want to note that having a community survey does not actually add to the timeline in any way. And also that we absolutely have been working closely with the applicant and their planners to make sure that they would have their experts on site for the open house, and they've been great about getting those kinds of dates held for us tentatively.
That would have to
if
be
we can move
key,
forward.
to make sure all their professionals are here, because
Absolutely.
those are what's going to be, those are what the general public are going to want to ask. So 24th would be possibly the open house, where all the professionals would be here for the proponent to answer any questions, open to the public for as many hours as it takes. Possibly on the May the 6th, rescind the first reading and give it first and second reading with the new amendment to the OCP and change.
So that one, I have to look at my colleague
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. He's nodding.
And I have to look
Yeah,
at
yeah.
our CAO as well because
Yeah.
she manages the
And then
schedule.
May 27th would be to hold the public hearing, and then we have a subsequent meeting following the public hearing on May the 27th. Now, during that time, there would be an opportunity for residents to come to the open house on the 24th. They would have over a month to be able to provide comments on the Have Your Say Anmore, as well as any website. Is that correct?
Sorry, so getting through the chair, it would not actually be a month because our team would still need time to take all of what we've learned and put it into a summary report, which takes at least a couple of weeks to do, even when we're doing it in process. So it's not that they would have a month from the 24th because we need time to do a report for you.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking that on the 24th, when residents come, get a lot of their questions answered, maybe have some more thoughts, would there be enough time then, give them to mid-May to provide those comments to be able then to, and would you be able to just, again, I don't need you to summarize them. I want to see the actual comments like they did last time. Just cut and paste and put them in a report.
So yeah, it actually does take, I know that sounds very easy, but it
No,
actually
no,
does
I'm
take
just-
quite a
yeah,
bit of time
yeah.
to put together a summary report. So, and I guess I also want to check with Karen because I can't give a nod to any dates because I just
Yeah.
don't know.
Ms. Elright.
Thank you, through the chair. So in terms of the public hearing date that you're suggesting at the end of May, staff would possibly suggest that we would start public hearing, perhaps whether it's this week or another week on the Monday, so that if we had to carry over, we would still have a regular council meeting scheduled on the 27th. So that is just one suggestion because
It's a good call.
sometimes something like this, gleans enough interest from the community that we would go over 2 evenings. So I would hate to not have enough time for that. Additionally, staff would be interested in seeking direction on the committee input. We could have a workshop before, in an evening before the open house. However, Staff would also seek direction whether council would want to see this go to Finance Committee, or if we would just invite the Public Finance Committee members to that same workshop. So that would be an important piece. Just confirming with Ms. Michelson as well on her schedule, and if the engagement is ending at the end of April, what council's expectation is in terms of receiving back the summary report and timing related to that, and whether that could be done before the public hearing, because of course council is not allowed to receive any information after the public hearing. So I think the timing could be tight, but I'll defer to Ms. Michelson, and also reiterate that we still are waiting for one final report as well.
So I just wanted to, I'm trying to get a path here. And so the reports, Mr. Savoy, the reports that you are comfortable with regarding the application of the environment, parks, those sorts of things. So we could, it's April 1st, we could start scheduling the committee meetings and even doing joint meetings as soon as possible. Those reports you're satisfied with. The financial, I believe you said you've received it, you're comfortable with it. We could schedule that for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And I think it's an opportunity, because I think it is a big thing that council does need to go through the financial with the consultants that are there. Is that?
The financial report, there's been some really good meetings between our consultant and the developer's consultant, and a draft is imminent. I understand I'm surprised we don't have it already. So okay. We haven't reviewed it yet, so I can't say whether I'm comfortable or not with it. In fact, I'll defer to our consultant, Coriolis Consulting, to give us that idea. But certainly, I think it's comfortable. You'd have enough time, 3 weeks. I'm sure we'll have that report this week. Okay. Yeah, I've seen tomorrow morning it's coming. So and then our consultant would review it. So if you book a meeting out 3 weeks from now, I'm sure that it will have some comments. Now, it's provided that there's no issues with it, but if there's issues, we could just let council know at that time.
So this also avails the residents an opportunity, because again, all these committee meetings and finance meetings are open to the public to listen in, and to also probably get a lot of questions answered, questions that we're going to have, and also from the committee members as well. I guess the big challenge is as Ms. Elrick and Ms. Nicholson had said, is putting reports from the committees together to be able then to be part of the entire package that we need to get a week before the end of May. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So just something to consider, to, be efficient as possible in the committee reviews. As you know and heard recently at council, we are undergoing recruitment for committees and re-engaging with current committee members. So there are some committees that are quite short in membership. As you may recall, in the last round of engagement, we held a workshop rather than committee meetings. So that always is an option, to hold a workshop that committee members could be invited to one evening, and then the other evening the open house for the public. And that may be a more efficient way to engage with that group rather than having several separate meetings. However, noting that if there was a particular committee, such as Finance Committee, that you did want to have a separate meeting, that would be something that would be achievable as well.
So I guess some of the committees, there is a bit of a synergy that they could meet together, i.e. environment and parks. And Councillor Trowbridge is our chair of our parks, and I've sat in for one time, and the committee actually had some similar, did it have similar membership as well, or some members? I think there was. Susan Mukel, I think, was me. Oh, and then we have, of course, we have public safety, and we have the CC committee. So I think that grouping them in those pairs would actually be a good thing. I do think the finance needs to be a standalone, because it is going to be all members of council. So I have no issue with grouping those. And again, I know that the timeline is tight, but it is April 1st. So we do have, in essence, 2 months away. But my main thing is if we can firm up with some of these dates, is then we can make it public. I want to hear from people And I want people in the community to know that this is the meeting. You can come out with all your comments at a public hearing, and I do like the idea of starting it off on a Monday night, because I think there may be some people that want to, want to get up and express themselves in regards and with our community. That's a real possibility. So I don't know where to move forward with this right now. I guess we could put a motion forward, but I don't know. I don't want to bind staff at this point in time. Ms. Nicholson.
Sorry, I also would just like to get some clarification, because if there is a change to the engagement plan, it would be great to get that direction tonight, because a lot of work has been done to get things ready to go for a community survey. So if we're not doing one, I don't know if we're doing it or not doing it. So getting clarification on the key components. As we said, there's the open house with the subject matter experts. We've got the committee meetings that we've just talked about, getting those some dates sent. There's the survey, there's the finance discussion with council. There is also a letter that will go out to some key organizations that will provide them with an opportunity as well to respond back on. So I just need a bit of clarification if we're doing the survey, and if we're not doing the survey, does that mean that residents would be provided with an opportunity to provide their input at the open house?
I think council was part of the terms of reference that we were going to do a survey of some sort. I am concerned about the level of the survey. Like, I'm fine with, regarding, well, would you like to see trails that are grass trails, or would you like to see asphalt trails? Those sorts of things on a much more neighborhood plan concept. Mr. Savoy.
Through the chair. Mr. Mayor, perhaps, and I'm just thinking ahead to the rezoning application, because what I'm hearing is some very specific questions about design detail regarding the plan. So, I don't want to throw a wrench into anything, but perhaps the survey might be better suited at the rezoning stage at some point if you're looking, even though there's no public hearing required, you might want to look at specifics of what types of commercial, what types of specifics of the design that we could put in.
That's where I was heading on that, because again, we're going to give the public an opportunity with the open house to be able to provide all the comments they want via email, and we're going to be able to listen to that and see that as well as the public hearing.
And I should just point out, just for people, I don't have to tell council this, but we're going to be taking any input that we receive, and we're going to be adjusting the neighborhood plan as we go based on what we're hearing. So hopefully we can incorporate, people can see their comments in the draft that we're going to produce for council's consideration.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, we probably won't have an email system at the open house, but they would have the opportunity to share comments on Have Your Say Anmore in it?
Yeah.
Is that what you meant? Okay,
Yeah,
so clarification. And the idea around the survey was actually that it would actually only be at the level of a neighborhood plan, preferred land use plan, not into the rezoning. So again, whatever direction from council would like to give us.
The open house, would there be an opportunity for comment cards and to be collected as well?
We can absolutely, we usually have comment cards,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, I got people wanting to talk.
Sorry,
Councilor Weber.
the comment cards, I'm sorry. I want any community input, I want it to be validated that it's, it's owned by somebody, that it's legitimate. The comment cards and the stickums, that didn't work before. I want I was quite happy with the plan, and Therese, or Ms. Mickelson, I think you've got it figured out, and I'm okay with it. I'm not afraid to hear what I hear, as long as it's validated.
Yeah. And again, through the chair, that was one of the reasons why we were working with a professional research firm to do this, so that they would develop the questionnaire and host the survey.
Councillor Richardson.
I'm actually getting quite disturbed listening to this. We're going to potentially change Anmore forever, and we're going to give residents one shot to talk to people in 3 weeks' time for reports they haven't even seen yet. It's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in like forever. We promised a survey, we promised a quantitative survey, and now what I'm hearing, the survey can say, do you want a conifer or do you want a deciduous tree on your pavement? Most ridiculous thing. We have to ask the residents, do you want this at all? Like, I don't understand why that's not a question we are allowed to ask the people that we represent. I'm appalled by this discussion. If we're going to have the public experts show up, we have 2 days. So we're going to say, you know, come April 24th or never come at all. Are you kidding me? Like, it's ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous to me. If it takes to December, who cares? You're changing Anmore forever, ramming this down the public. You want backlash? It will be coming full force if you try and do anything like this. Like,
Thanks for your comments. I will say, though, that the survey is not quantitative, is it? Because we don't have a big enough base.
The survey is quantitative, but not statistically valid.
Okay.
There's- Yeah.
Ms. Cryer, or Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. For clarity to Councillor Richardson's comments, there will be other opportunities for input up until the fourth reading. Is that correct? Or what is,
So people will be able to provide comment to council up to the public hearing.
okay,
So once the public hearing is closed, then the council can't receive any additional input at that point. On the OCP amendment, of course, if that proceeds and council adopts it at some point in the future, another process will start for the rezoning, but there's no public hearing required for the rezoning application.
clarification, although there's no public hearing for rezoning, there is, people can send a letter for getting down into the, what I foresee the survey Ms. Mickelson is speaking about.
Do you want to talk about it? No, there is no formal process based on
Right.
legislation. However, if council decides there's some form of a process that the developer should do as they're going through it in terms of, reaching out to the neighborhood design, those types of things, you could do that. It's not prohibited in the act.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Trowbridge, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, I do, just briefly. I think we're way beyond asking a question, do you want this or not? That's been litigated multiple times over multiple years. So, I think we have a schedule. I think I heard Ms. Mickelson say, and please correct me if I'm hearing it incorrectly, that the survey that's envisioned would not in any way impede other activities anyway. It's sort of, I don't use the word dovetailed in, but it's worked into the schedule that the mayor just spoke about, provided all funds were. And is that correct?
Ms. Mickelson?
I'm sorry, through the chair, I couldn't hear what he said.
I believe his comment was that the survey that you are suggesting wouldn't impede any of the scheduling that we had been talking about regarding with having a public hearing by the end of May.
Yes, that's correct. It would not impede the timing.
Not impede the timing. Okay.
Yes, so based on that, I mean, we've had multiple engagements. There have been multiple opportunities for community members to express on the bigger question, do you want this, don't you want this? All of that's been done. So I'm quite comfortable with what's in front of us right now.
Okay. Ms. Elright.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing and what staff would seek direction on, and I can pass over for a recommendation to Ms. Guzakara. Firstly, to proceed with a survey or not at council's pleasure. Secondly, regarding committees, I'm hearing scheduling a finance committee, and then staff would want to seek direction on whether a workshop or other specific committee meetings would be desired. Next, indicating the goal for engagement to occur at the end of April, pending, of course, the vetting of the final report and receipt of that. In the evening, at an open house, a weekday evening. And then following that same schedule, should all of those things occur, to endeavor to bring back rescinding of first reading, first and second reading, along with the neighborhood plan at as soon as possible in May, with the engagement report to follow prior to the public hearing, with a goal of engaging in the public hearing thereafter the engagement summary report.
That is a good summation. I just realized that before we even moved to that, we had a recommendation, or we didn't get the recommendation on the thing, which was just simply to receive the report dated March 28, 2025, entitled Anmore South Status of OCP Amendment Application for Information, from referring to Mr. Savoy's report. Get someone to move that. Moved. Second. We've discussed all those in favor. Opposed? Carried unanimously. So now we need some a new motion then. And I'll rely on Ms. Elrick to kind of follow up, because I believe that was what was captured in most of the conversation.
Sure. So I think the only things that I would seek clarification on before we get the motion, if council wants to provide or bring forward survey or no survey. And the other thing that I was not clear on what council would like to bring forward in a motion, workshop style, like was done before with the committees, except for the finance committee, or whether formal committee meetings should be scheduled.
I believe we just heard that the survey, which there's been work done on it already, is not going to impede any of the timing whatsoever. So I think there is consensus. I think that would be a motion. And then the second one would be that the committees meet in, I don't know if a workshop idea, but in groups maybe? The committees?
I like the workshop.
Yeah. My preference would be, too many people makes it too vast, and my preference would be in groups, in groupings, so.
My preference is workshop plus finance committee, because we have a lot of people that double up, and it's worked before.
And then the third one is, what was the third one? No, the survey was number one. Oh, timing?
Timing, yes.
Timing, yeah, okay.
So what I have, if I can recap,
Yeah.
through the chair, that a survey to be conducted, that committee meetings in workshop format plus a finance committee to be scheduled, an open house to be scheduled for a date at the end of April, and if all these criteria is satisfied, rescind first and second reading in May, with the engagement report to follow prior to public hearing.
And we'd have to give first and second reading in early. Rescind as well as
Give the first and second
yeah.
reading, yes, certainly.
Okay. Well, let's get that. Is that a motion?
So what was that? I didn't quite
She's going to
hear.
read it out again as a motion.
Okay. Now, so we received the report for information, and the rest of the motion would be, and that a survey be conducted as planned. Committee meetings in a workshop format will be scheduled, and a finance committee meeting. An open house meeting will be arranged for the end of April. And if all these conditions are met, the council will rescind first and second reading in a May meeting, and then provide the rereading with the engagement report to follow prior to the public hearing, if that makes sense.
For the end of May.
Yes, for the end of May.
Okay.
Point of information on that. Can council agree to rescind something at a future council meeting? Don't they have to actually have a debate and discussion about it?
Mr. Savoy?
So so the way I understood it, so May 6th is council's desiring to have the new bylaw to consider first and second
Yeah.
reading, and you can rescind the bylaw that night. Probably Ms. Elric can tell you that as well. But yeah, you could rescind the original bylaw and then reread the new bylaw, or vice versa. You could do it
That
both
evening.
ways. You're just taking one off the books and adding one
Yeah.
on.
And as to all those 4 motions that are now in one, I suggest they get split up and discussed separately.
You can ask for separation.
I'm asking for separation.
Okay. So could we do the first? Let's get them on the table first. Yeah. Okay. Let's get the first.
Okay, the first one would be, and that a survey to be conducted.
On Anmore South. Okay, could I get someone to move that? Second, any discussion?
I've heard a few times tonight that we've already asked the people, do they want this, yes or no? We have not asked that ever. And in fact, more to the point, anybody who says no gets labeled as a NIMBYism or extreme NIMBYism or a naysayer or something along those lines. We should ask the question. It may not be a referendum, fair enough. But in the survey, if you can make it quantifiable by name, address, email, or whatever it happened to be, we should ask the question. So I'm absolutely for a survey, but I'm not for what color do you want the paint on the phone booth. Like, that's the most ridiculous survey I've ever heard of.
I stand corrected. I think the survey is one that is going to be, as Ms. Nicholson decided or described earlier, is already being worked on and will be formatted on the more so the neighborhood plan. Yeah.
Yes, through the chair. The survey is related to the preferred land use plan, which is the foundation for the neighborhood plan.
Yeah.
And it will, to your question, it is not a referendum question survey, Councillor Richardson. It will have open-ended options for people to provide comment, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But can they say, no, we don't want this at all?
It's not a referendum question.
Yeah.
It's not quantitative, and it gets dismissed by this council.
Good. Okay. So any other questions, comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next motion.
Next motion is scheduling scheduling committee meetings in a workshop format and a finance committee meeting to be scheduled.
Someone to move that. Moved, seconded, open up for discussion. See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Third one would be at the end of April, and a weekday evening, an open house will be scheduled.
With all the professionals, yeah, okay. Motion moved, second, any discussion? Okay.
We
Councillor
don't have the
Richardson?
final documents. We don't even know what we're talking about. To schedule a meeting at the end of April before any of that is actually in front of us is ridiculous to me.
Thank you. Councillor
That's
Cryer.
correct.
Oh, okay, you're next, Councillor Trowbridge. Go ahead, Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Could we be, I don't want to be specific with the date that we've discussed, April 27th. Could we add no later? 24th, sorry. Could we add no later than the end of April, just so we keep the timing up?
Ms. Elric.
Through the chair, I think staff has noted council's desire of those dates. However, I will reiterate that the final report is still pending, and although we will receive it tomorrow, I am told, Coriolis, the village's consultant, still needs to review it. So I wouldn't want to, put a timeline on them if that's not sufficient time, or if there are areas identified in the report that they would like fleshed out.
And that's fair. I just don't think we should wait until we have everything in hand to start scheduling. Further to what Mayor McEwen said, we want to give everyone ample time to, mark their calendars and be able to attend.
Good, good. Go ahead, Councillor Trowbridge.
I think it's been addressed. I believe Mr. Savoy said that we'll have the final report tomorrow, and that it's not expected to take that long. So I still think there's enough time horizon. I'm comfortable with it.
Thank you. Councillor Wevering.
I'm totally in favor of having a plan, but of course, if we don't have the reports or we don't have the reports vetted properly, then we would have to move that date. But I think, I mean, in business, you have a schedule. In construction, you have a schedule. Boom, boom, boom. This is what you want to see happen and when. And we all have to shoot for those dates. If we don't make the date, yeah, then the schedule slides. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a plan and, you know, basing it on best guess. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Okay, this is about the open house for the end of the month. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now we'll go on to number 4.
That would be, and that if these steps are completed, engagement plan is ready. Council plan to rescind the first and second reading in a May meeting and prior to the public hearing, and do the readings again. Sorry, I'll word this properly. It's just rough notes at this point.
I was looking for my bright red card.
I know. My apologies. I'm trying to work on the wording as I'm recording everything.
Okay.
So sorry.
Can I get someone to move? Oh,
Thank you. I would suggest a more accurate reflection instead of council planning to Councillor Richardson's point of planning to rescind, that council provide direction for staff to bring forward the bylaw for consideration to rescind and grant first and second reading following the steps.
good. So with that addition and new wordings, could I get someone to move that? Moved and seconded. Open up for discussion. Councillor Richardson.
I keep hearing neighborhood plan. We don't have a neighborhood plan. We're talking about having a neighborhood plan. The survey is going to be on a neighborhood plan which doesn't even exist, and that's not the thing that's showing up tomorrow. When will we have the neighborhood plan that we're going to put into the thing on second reading in a month and a half?
Mr. Savoy.
So, through the chair, so the neighborhood plan will be presented as part of the OCP amendment on May the 6th, if that's the date that council receives it.
And how does the survey, if it happens, happen before the neighborhood plan is actually presented, since the survey is on the neighborhood plan?
Through the chair, the survey is on the preferred land use plan, which is the foundation document for the neighborhood plan.
Okay, any other questions? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both. Okay, we'll go on to the mayor's report. Just a couple things. Anmore Garden Club, April 16th, 10 a.m. onwards, is here at the park, just to let everybody know. I also wanted to just make people aware of, there's some real challenges right now in heavy negotiations going on with TransLink. And TransLink is literally at a financial cliff, I think is what they refer to it. They're in debt about $600 million. They're at their borrowing capacity. And if we don't get money from some of the senior levels of government, it's going to be, service is going to start to have to get cut. And it's going to get cut significantly, like 25% of all bus traffic as well. But one of the big things that I'm looking at is our MRN funding. So just to put things in perspective, our MRN funding total for the year for the two roads, which is East Road and Sunnyside, is about $276,000. It's going to be something, I believe it is going to be on the chopping block, because it's a way for the province to download those funds onto us as municipalities. So we have to start thinking about this. Now, I will tell you this. So TransLink is governed by two boards, just to make, one is called the actual TransLink board, which is has several appointees on it from provincial government. We've been able to get 2 or 3 mayors on it, but it's still, we're not a voting power. And they set a lot of the policies and stuff like that. Then there's the Mayor's Council, which every mayor in the region is a member of, and it's a weighted vote. I may be a very big presence in the room, but unfortunately my weighting power is not very strong. So you have places like Surrey and Vancouver who can really dictate in regards to what's happening. So the Mayor's Council's responsibilities are the investment plan and also financing. And so we have a couple things that we are only allowed to adjust, and one is the gas tax, the parking tax, fares, and of course, property tax. Well, the provincial government is coming at us saying, we want you to up your property taxes significantly to help pay for this because we don't have money to pay for it. Although they're the ones, the provinces and federal government are telling us how we need to basically put housing on steroids. Where's this transit going to come from? So it's a really bad situation. The gas tax is actually going down because of the amount of electric vehicles that are now on the road. The parking tax right now, just so some of you are aware, is close to 30% in the city of Vancouver and areas that charge for parking. That's a tax that goes on top of it. And of course, fares just went up 4% for this year. The proposal is to put them up another 5%, which is going to be terrible, or not that specific percent, but something like that. So property tax is where they're coming at. And there's a lot of negotiations going on right now. I don't know where it's going to end up. I can tell you that I'm fighting to retain our service that we have, but also to retain the MRN funding because it's going to be a tough hit on some of our smaller communities. So just wanted to pass that on regarding and that's my mayor's report. So any councillors' reports? Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Reminding everyone that we do have the dementia brain health workshops coming up starting, oh goodness, April 22nd? Nope, 7 days before that. First one is April 15th. Thank you. I spoke with the organizer. See how I do with numbers? Spoke with the organizers today, and registration is pretty slow. So I think we need to get the word out a little bit more. Perhaps we can put it on our social media pages one more time, and we all could share it, please.
Good.
All right, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
It's more of a question than a report. I'm curious to know what happened with the APC meeting on Hillside, which happened January 28th. We have heard nothing back. And for reasons that people, if they read social media, I'm actually curious to know what was discussed and what the recommendation from the APC on that happened to be.
Thank you. So through the chair, the APC meeting minutes and all committee meetings and commissions typically don't get posted or published until they are adopted. However, in a case of a development application or something that we would be seeking further direction, which is the case here, we would bring back the draft of those minutes the next time that report is coming back to council. So currently, related to that development application, the applicant is updating their plans and sending updated information to staff for review, at which time it will be brought forward again to council, and the APC comments will accompany that at that time. I'm not sure if you have anything further to add.
A rough estimate, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months? Is there any feel?
Yeah, so through the chair, we received an updated presentation, I would call it, just as of yesterday, which had taken on board the comments from council and from the APC. And so we're waiting to have the reviewed reports and whatnot, which accompany those to come back. So I would like to say maybe sometime in May, June, it would come back to council for consideration.
Good. CAO report.
Thank you. So just wanted to remind everyone that we have our Easter event coming up on Saturday, April 19th at noon. Details are on the website, and also our coloring contest flyer is going to be mailed out to the community and is available on the website and also available at the Village Hall here. And we will be moving forward with our Name the Truck contest, launching at that event for our new dump truck, as well as launching the first part of our engagement related to the Spirit Park expansion. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Okay, we have some information items, some minutes of the public hearing held on March 18th. Some general correspondence. Now open up to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council pertaining to village business to the time it applies to speakers. Please.
Jurgen Durkton, 1815 East Road, 1815A East Road. The last public question period, I learned, and we learned that the hub debt was about.
Sorry, what's...
Hello? At the last meeting, council meeting, I learned that the hub costs about $2.5 million. So I have a bunch of questions related to that, and then some other questions that have been covered partly, at least, in the meeting. What was the grand cost, grand total cost to build the hub? Was it $8.5 million or was it $11 million?
Your first comment was that the hub cost $2.5 million
Sorry,
to build.
the debt owing on the hub was $2.5
The
million.
mortgage that was taken out on the hub was $2.5 million.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So what was the grand total cost to build the hub?
8.5.
I don't have that total information in front of me right now.
The gentleman who spoke before us at the beginning of the meeting, I'm not sure if his official title, said that it was 80% of the $15 million, which is $12 million. That's what he said at the meeting.
No,
So-
no, that's not correct.
So I'm getting confused. Anyway,
I would suggest sending an email if you want to Ms. Elrick, and we'll get you the exact total.
this is a public question period.
Yeah, that's a public
Yes.
email that you can send out as well.
Yeah, the other question Ms. Martin sort of dealt with, but I would like to clarify because it's been a very long meeting. How long is it expected to take before the village pays off that $2.5 million? 10 or 15 years?
I understand that the debt is at 25 years right now, but the
25?
village has the opportunity to pay it off at 10 years, or at 15 years, or at 20 years. So it's taken out as a 10-year mortgage on its first term, and then there's an amount owing at the end. But if we wanted to have it paid out to zero, then it's over a 25-year amortization.
Thank you very much. My question, follow-up question, is the debt on the hub the reason why we haven't been able to afford to build adequate parking for the hub? And is this the reason why the deforested Ravenswood property opposite the hub is now being zoned commercial? Is there some sort of connection between that?
No.
No? Has the village received any commitment for a commercial enterprise to establish a coffee shop at the hub?
Ms. Elrick?
Thank you. Through the chair, the village is currently reviewing the applicants that responded to the request for offer to lease the space.
So there are applicants in process of being reviewed. Thank you. Fifth question, does Mossam Creek watershed run through the Anmore South Lands? Yes or no?
I would ask them.
I would suggest the answer is yes. Look to Schoolhouse Creek. And this question was asked or mentioned already at the beginning. But where is this traffic impact assessment for Anmore South that was apparently completed on March 30 by the planning consultant? We have 3 weeks before we have an open house, and we don't have the traffic report. Where is it? When are we going to see it? How are we going to see it?
Ms.
I'll just respond because we'll be the ones posting it. We're just waiting for all the reports to be completed, but we're also doing summaries for people because while some residents are extremely dedicated and are willing to read, hundreds of pages, we also want to make sure there's summaries for people that I'm calling a Coles Notes version to make it as easy as possible for people to read it at whatever level they want. And when everything's complete, we'll be posting it, which sounds like will be soon.
Soon? Thank you.
Testing, can you hear? Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. And sorry, I know that it's very late, so I apologize for taking up more time. And I know we are all very tired. And this is also sort of a more, you can't hear, Doug?
No, I can't hear.
Can't hear?
That's better.
Better?
Yeah.
Better? So this is actually a more minor issue compared to the major issue which has been recently discussed. But members of council may be aware that recently there has been considerable concern in our village about unsafe driving practices. You know, for example, speeding and this propensity to ignore stop signs. This is not a recent issue by any means. And all of these issues fall within the mandate of the Public Safety Committee. But related to this, why have all scheduled meetings of the Public Safety Committee been canceled in the past year? Like meetings were set in the inaugural committee, a number of meetings were set, and each and every time the meetings were canceled ostensibly for lack of agenda items, despite the desire of committee members, their willingness to meet, and their surprise that there was nothing on the agenda. So also, I was concerned that the appointed members of Public Safety Committee, they seemed like they were not invited to the recent Bear Aware joint meeting of the Environment and the Parks and Recs Committee, but this topic falls directly within the mandate of public safety, which includes wildlife interaction. So those are my several questions. And I don't know if our consultants are aware that in many cases, specifically public safety, that the agenda of the meetings are controlled by council, primarily the mayor, and the mayor seems to have the authority to prevent these committees from meeting despite the desire of committee members.
That's false. That's not true.
Mayor McEwen, could you explain why all meetings were canceled and committee members were told there was nothing on the agenda?
I'm going to ask Ms. Elrick, but I don't cancel committee meetings. Part of my purview is to set up committees and establish committees, and then that's it, but not to cancel them. So that's complete false.
Thank you. Through the chair, in terms of your first concern about safety concerns, if there are safety concerns, certainly we do encourage residents to report them to RCMP through the non-emergency line where appropriate, and through emergency where that is needed. In terms of the committees, we have provided information to the public and to committees before, but just as an update, committees serve at the direction of council, and not one member of council, but council does provide direction on items to be referred to committees. So if there are no committee items, then there are no committee meetings. And in terms of the Bear presentation, that was a public meeting, so anybody who wished to come to that meeting and participate or engage and listen to the presentation, it was quite a welcoming environment that everybody around the table joined in. So we always do encourage members of the public to come to our committee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Any other public questions? Okay, motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. And, geez, we went long tonight.